215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900. 215-634-8065, toll free. It is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Also, we have an insightful, very essential conversation that's coming up that I'm doing in conjunction with the Council of State Governments Eastern Regional Conference, their Council on Communities of Color. That is this Friday at 2 p.m. It is on, it's giving guidance, best practice public health guidance on how to navigate reopening societies, reopening communities. How do we protect ourselves? We were having that discussion yesterday. I'm still hearing a lot of confusion surrounding what people need to do as they're starting to venture outside. So we're having a convening of policymakers, also public health practitioners and experts, Council of State Governments Eastern Regional Conference, which is a consortium of state legislators, having that at 2 p.m. on Friday. I'll be moderating that. That is a Zoom-based micro summit, as we call it, and that is something that we occasionally do with the Council of State Governments. You have to register for that. It's free. It's free. You have to register for that. Just go to the companion magazine to Reality Check on WURD. The companion magazine is thebenote.com. Just go to thebenote.com. That registration announcement just going out, and you can register for that and interface with those experts in real time and ask them questions about public health best practices during pandemic. How do I protect myself? You know, that's a big question I keep hearing from a lot of folks who will be convening that conversation, a very important conversation this Friday. 215-634-8065, also toll free. It is 866-361-0900. 215-634-8065, toll free. It is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Also, City Council, their meeting of the whole City Council, that meeting, you know, typically they happen on Thursdays. We've been in pandemic. It's a lot more different, obviously, in terms of how City Hall is operating, how the mayor's office is operating, how the Philadelphia City Council is operating, and just policymakers and legislators all over. So this week's City Council meeting of the whole has been canceled. It has been postponed or pushed to the following Thursday. That has been going on quite a bit. So as City Council gets used to or adapts to the climate, the new environment that we're in, so, you know, they're just trying to find a new stride here. So that has been postponed or canceled this Thursday. There is no City Council live this Thursday. We hope that there will be one next Thursday. I know there are a lot of folks out there who are wanting to see what Philadelphia City Council is doing. I urge you to continue going to phlcouncil.com. However, there are budget hearings. There are hearings that are scheduled for next week, all throughout next week, Monday through pretty much most of these budget hearings are scheduled Monday through Wednesday of next week, May 18th, May 19th, May 20th. Need to find a way to make this more available to everyone, so we'll worry about that. But there is a cluster of budget hearings on a variety of city agencies. The budget hearing on city administration, the city administration's 5-year plan, their capital program, also the mayor's office budget, Philadelphia Community College, aviation and water. So this is like the budget hearing on city administration, Community College of Philadelphia, and also enterprise funds. That takes place Monday in the morning, 9:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. and also 2:30 p.m. to 5 p.m. That's the next one coming up. So maybe we'll put that at hashtag. We'll figure out a way to house that at hashtag City Council Live and figure out some other vehicles to push that out. Obviously, these hearings are going to take place. They're going to take place via through a virtual environment. More than likely, you know, the City Council will be convening through Microsoft Teams, and you should be able to go to phlcouncil.com and watch this on Philadelphia City Council's website. But, you know, we'll definitely throughout the week remind people that City Council is still convening and that there are budget hearings that are taking place. So you definitely want to check those out to keep an eye on what Philadelphia City Council is doing. I know, and I hear this from a lot of people who are wondering what City Hall is up to. They wonder what City Council is up to. Just putting this out there to City Council. I understand now. I understand that City Council is adapting to the moment. It's a very difficult moment. And so there's a lot of work behind the scenes that's going into trying to help legislators on the city, state, and federal levels find some sort of stride to run things a little bit more smoothly. But just a word of advice to folks in the City Council environment or Philadelphia City Council and other legislators, please be transparent as much as you can. Please try to find opportunities to explain to the public how you're adapting to this new pandemic environment, since we're all going through it. And I think people will be a little bit more understanding, because optically, like I was remembering that conversation we were having with, I think it was Abdul Jabbar out of West Philly. And he was talking about how he lives in Delaware County and how Delaware County commissioners have been convening, sometimes quietly, passing legislation that otherwise would not have been passed, or the public would have not been too enthusiastic about. So, you know, there is a perception. And, you know, in this time and in this kind of climate, perception and optics reign over everything else, right? And, which is unfortunate. It's very unfortunate. So it's very crucial. It's very, very critical, absolutely critical. I cannot stress how critical it is for city, state, and federal legislators or policymakers. But since we're talking about Philadelphia City Council, they're going to have to be very transparent about how they're maneuvering and how they are scheduling, how they are gearing up for hearings, budget hearings. How are you making that information much more accessible, much more available to the public, so they understand what you're going through? I think people will be very understanding if you're just at least transparent, at the very least, about what you're convening, how you're scheduling, what's being passed. I don't get the feeling, I don't get the sense from the public, based on various people I talk to, that people really know how City Hall is operating right now. And I think that it's high time now for City Hall, and since we're talking about the council, please try to be as transparent as possible, particularly at a time, and I'm saying this in a very, you know, I'm not trying to berate anyone, I'm not trying to disparage any legislative body or anything like this. I'm being as nice as possible about this. Please be transparent about, because there have been a lot of cancellations of hearings, and I understand what you're going through. I do understand what the City Council and other legislators are going through, because I've been in that, I've been in those types of capacities, right? But the average person, the average Philadelphian, the person who's staying at home, those households, they don't know, they don't understand it, and so to them, the perception is that, oh, like, you guys are canceling things, you're postponing things. What are you trying to hide? I'm just saying that, you know, the optics can just ruin everything, and just, you know, kind of give the impression that unseemly things are taking place, and that's the last thing we need in a pandemic climate like this. So transparency is key. Just be open about what you're doing. You know, just tell people kind of step by step, hey, this is what we're going through. Sorry about this, but this is what we're going through. Let me go to Antoinette out of Southwest, who's calling in for a reality check. Antoinette?
How you doing, Brother Ellison? How are you?
All right, good morning. How are you doing?
Oh, good morning to you, too. I'm doing pretty good. Thank you.
All right, good.
Yeah, because I was calling because I wanted to thank you for the information as far as though how the law wants to, you know, illegally enter our homes and, you know, want to take our temperature and you know, want to give us some unknown, I guess, what they call it, virus injection, trying to violate our rights.
What are you talking, as far as contact tracing? What are you talking about?
Like, as far as the legislation that they was trying to pass, where they indicated that they can just come into your home and take your temperature and give you different varieties of tests to take
Oh,
to
see,
see
I'm
if
not.
you're
Yeah,
COVID.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Antoinette, and I'm not familiar. Forgive my ignorance on this. I'm not familiar. Who was passing that legislation?
Oh, I'm not sure because I was hearing it, and our brother, our professor, he was talking about it as well
Okay.
yesterday. It may
Okay,
have
got it.
been one of your guests, you know,
Hmm.
that brought it up, and you know, um,
Yeah, I'm not recalling. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm just not recalling. There's probably, and my apologies for that too. I
oh
just
no,
haven't.
that's okay.
Yeah,
No,
maybe
that's
it's
okay.
just so much information to kind of unpack and keep up with. So maybe I missed that, but I haven't seen that yet. It just hasn't kind of like it's not floating before, and that's nothing on you. That's on me. So I'll look into that a little bit more. But go ahead.
Yeah. I just wanted to thank you anyway because I heard it, and then the confirmation when our brother Professor Aaron came on after you,
Hmm.
and I just wanted to give some information out to a senior citizen on the morning program because the host had me on hold for 2 hours, and it was a senior citizen that was robbed, approached by two males, and they robbed him of his $800 where he was
Mm.
going to the bank to make a deposit. And being as though that I love people, I love helping people, you know, and I always call to give resources and, you
Yeah.
know, give phone numbers, you know, being, you know, a formal, you know, police corporal. And then I
Hmm.
give out information from other guests that comes on and give out phone numbers and, you know, resources as well, you know,
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
I'm hoping.
and you know what I would do too, Antoinette. That's a real good point. I think when you have information like that, you're trying to get it to folks. Call is it may be hard sometimes. You may be a high volume of calls, but like call us on sort of a separate line if you think it's like some real important information, public information. I think it was what like the station line is 215-425-7875 or info at wordradio.com. That's a great win. I know folks are checking. I'm sorry, Antoine, I got to move on. I hate to do this, but I got to let me take another caller here. But no, I appreciate that. But I would say 215 425-7875 info at wordradio.com. And then also those are kind of centralized conduits to vet the information as well to make sure that it's accurate and reliable public information that we're putting out because there's a lot of misinformation and we have to be careful of that that's happening in an environment like this. I want to talk about that a little bit later on in the course of this program. Let me go to Jacob out of Alney who's calling in for a reality check.
Hey, peace be unto you, brother Ellison.
Peace, Jacob. How are you doing?
Oh man, I'm blessed. I'm blessed. The stressing I get over, but I want to ask you, did you see the new Joe Biden commercial? That I mean, in Trump's own words, man, it oh my goodness, it's gonna be.
See, yeah, I saw it. So this is what. Yeah, thank you for that, Jacob. There has to be. I feel like Democrats and Joe Biden included are making the same mistake from 2016. We see in real time everything about Trump, like the entire all the oxygen in the room is consumed by Trump. So it's like we need to see more of Joe Biden, right? Or we need to see more of what Democrats are offering. I'm getting leery of so many commercials where it's just Trump's voice and it's Trump's face and it's all the wrong thing. And we know all the wrong things Trump is doing, but you're not seeing enough of like the candidate or you're not seeing enough of Democrats. I worry about that. I'm concerned because it's the exact same thing the Democrats did back in 2016. It's like, okay, hey, vote against Trump, but okay, if I'm voting for you, Democrats, what am I voting for?
But see, here's the deal, though, brother Charles. Again, if you got to show this man, see in 16, we didn't see this. I can't even call him a man. We didn't see it. This guy, the Supreme Court today is hearing arguments on whether they're going to release. In other words, can he be like a czar, like a dictator, or are we going to keep the democracy that these Supreme Court justices were put up there to in other words, to protect the Constitution, the law, the rule of law, and everything like that. But the bottom line is, I don't think that they're doing wrong, because when you show this guy for who he is, I wouldn't care if Happy the Clown was running against him. I don't care if you know, whatever. You can't be as bad as this guy. And so, I mean, there's no other alternative. I mean, if we had three parties or some other people running, then we would have an option. There's no option now. And so, and we got to watch it with our people, because any little thing will make us stay home like Trump wants us to do, so he can go up to the podium the day after and thank black people again for not voting, and then we be crying about, oh, my God, we know he's a racist. We saw what he did with that reporter, China. Why don't you go? And she you know, asked him, why yesterday. Particularly, you see, we see this man. I said this is just the beginning. I said this a while back. It's going to be so easy to go and vote by November that, and it's easy now, but I believe it's going to be as easy as voting for Satan or good. I'm going to leave it like that. Thank you.
No, I hear you. And, I mean, the choice is very clear, right? And, you know, as the maxim from that Black Sheep song goes, like, the choice is yours. You can get with this or you can get with that, right? And and the choice is very clear in that respect. If Democrats want to win the election, however, they're going to have to find a balance somewhere, or going to have to start figuring out really clear, resonant ways to highlight policies and competency, or like what they have to offer. What are they putting on the table? And so we know the kind of monster that Donald Trump is. We know that. We establish that. We see it every day. We see it showing itself, you know, unfolding each and every day. And it is very stressful, and it creates new layers of anxiety and nervousness. But, you know, people do, at the end of the day, you know, particularly those base voters on either side, they're voting for policies and ideology. And, you know, we're going to have to show, like, what are sort of the better policy ideas? What are the impact of current policies and regulation? I don't see enough conversation about that. The role of judges, of federal judges especially, and also competency and governance. And I know right now that sounds a little bit kind of high level and sophisticated, but Democrats are going to have to, in very simple kind of plain terms, show, okay, well, you know, we all understand what we're voting against, what we're trying to save ourselves from, but as we're doing that, we're also voting for what we're putting, or what we're proposing, what we have on the table here, our package. They need to have, that package needs to be much clearer, and I'm not sure it's clear yet. I'm not sure they've refined that message yet. All right, let's take a break, and when we come back on the other side, we're supposed to be talking with Ronaldo Pearson of Represent Us. We're going to talk about vote by mail. Vote by mail is a big movement to get people prepared for vote by mail, but there are a number of states that are falling behind on that. We'll have that discussion coming up next with Ronaldo Pearson here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Word app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Get your money straight. Get my money right. With Solomon Jones and Akbar Hassan. Fridays on Wake Up with Word. 7 a.m. till 10 a.m. Hosted by Solomon Jones. Exclusively on Word Radio. 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on wordradio.com and on the Word Radio app.
For over 115 years, Philly's top sandwich pros have always started the exact same way. Amoroso's, why Philly's sandwiches are world famous. During these unprecedented and challenging times, Amoroso's would like to thank its customers and its associates for their hard work and dedication as they continue to feed our community. This too shall pass, and Amoroso's will be by your side and on your table now and for generations to come. Want to make the very best sandwiches? Always start with the very best. Amoroso's.
The COVID-19 outbreak has forced all of us who can to remain at home, and for good reason. We need to stop the spread of this virus, but access to medical advice remains a critical need at this time. The This is Dr. Rich Snyder, Chief Medical Officer for Independence Blue Cross. Whenever you need it, wherever you are, you can reach a medical professional by telephone or video from your laptop, tablet, or mobile phone. Much of the same care you'd receive in person can be done with telemedicine. Primary and urgent care, specialist visits, behavioral health, physical, occupational, and speech therapy. Call your doctor to take advantage of telemedicine. It will limit exposure to COVID-19 for yourself, the community, and our valued caregivers. For more, visit ibx.com/COVID-19. Together, we will beat COVID-19.
WurdRadio.com. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Wurd Radio and WurdRadio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check 96.1 FM 900 AM, WurdRadio.com, Wurd app, Wurd TV, as well on Facebook, live on Facebook.com/4Word, Facebook.com/4Word, also YouTube.com/OnWord as well for more there. Ronaldo Pearson is Director of External Affairs for Represent Us. It's an advocacy group that's pushing hard for vote by mail. We are trying to remote the vote in 2020. Go to represent.us, represent.us for more information on that, and also what the vote by mail laws or the vote by mail features are in your specific state. We're going to talk a little bit about that, unpack that with Ronaldo. He's joining us by phone. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Charles. Thanks for having me.
All right, good. You can also go to @Ronaldo Pearson on social media, on Twitter more specifically, to hear more there. So, Ronaldo, pandemic obviously here to stay. That's raising a whole array of public health concerns. People very cautious about going outside. Least of all, a lot of folks out there very anxious and very worried with elections coming up. They may be excited about participating in the 2020 election, participating in like a spate of primaries that we have coming up next. But, particularly like in Pennsylvania, for example, we've got the June 2nd primary. But they're very cautious about showing up at a physical on-site location. We're probably going to have fewer polling precincts, obviously, by the time we get to the general election. So what's the alternative strategy here? What's the alternative mode of operation? We're saying universal vote by mail. So talk about that and how that works.
Yes, universal vote by mail as an option. I mean, we've already seen what just happened in Wisconsin on April 7th. We got a close-up view of what it's like to vote in a pandemic. Wisconsin voters, many of them wearing masks, waited in long lines at a limited number of polling stations. Many polling places were closed. Even more were short-staffed, creating confusion for voters. Many voters stayed at home, unwilling or unable to risk their health to exercise their right to vote, which contributed to low voter turnout and even less representation of the people's will in the presidential election. So at this point, with the Wisconsin example behind us, we now know that over 50 voters and election workers who took part in Wisconsin's primary have tested positive for COVID-19. So this should be the wake-up call for all of us to move forward with vote by mail as an option nationwide. And it's not as if this is some foreign experiment. There are already 5 states that have vote by mail or absentee balloting, if you will, as the default. And that is Oregon, blue state, Colorado, Utah, which is red state, Hawaii, and Washington.
So how confident, however, are we about ramping up vote by mail in just a matter of months, right? Because the states you just mentioned, those 5 states, it took them years to implement. Like we were talking to the former president of the Colorado State Senate, and he was president of the Colorado State Senate up until the time Obama was elected or first elected as president. And he remembers putting that in place. It took about 10 years to do it. So now we're saying, let's do this in a matter of months. Vote by mail might be like theoretically a viable option, but how confident are we that it's going to be available and a solid option by the time we're ready for the general election in 2020?
Well, the good thing is that we have these 5 states to use as blueprints, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, this is America, right? If we can put a man on the moon, and we certainly can, you know, scale up our operations to make sure that this is in place nationwide. Now, that is not to downplay the challenges and hurdles we'll have to overcome to make sure that this is implemented nationwide. But it was Abraham Lincoln who said, "Determined things shall be done, and we shall go in that direction." We will do it, right? Once we, gumption, pull together the political will to actually get this accomplished. Of course, there will certainly be hurdles. In fact, the Brennan Center estimates that it will take at least $2 billion to assist the states to scale up their operations to make this happen. But one has to ask the question more importantly, because the question is really not, can we do it? The question really is, what will happen if we don't? Wisconsin should be the 911 call to every state in this nation. The numbers continue to rise, and these are verified numbers from state officials. I mean, those numbers started around the teens. Now we're past the 50s. And it's not just Wisconsin. I saw a report from Chicago also, a poll worker there. So this is the question we have to ask. Again, not can we do it, because we know we can. The question is, what will happen if we don't? I would argue that we've already lost enough to this pandemic. We don't want to lose what's left of our democracy too.
So what are organizations like yours, like Represent Us, doing to get us to that point, to scale up, and also to work with elections officials on the local, county, state level to encourage them to scale up as well? And not all elections administrators are equal or are thinking equally on this, because you have elections administrators on a county or state level. They may be resistant to that vote by mail option. Obviously, we see folks at the very top in the federal government, from the president on down, they're resistant to vote by mail. So definitely the big question is, what happens if we don't do this? But another big question is, can we get everyone on the same page about vote by mail so this thing can work universally? So what are organizations like yours doing about that?
That's a great question, Charles. And I'll just say that really 2 responses. One is about what we do at the grassroots level, and the other is about cost. On the grassroots level, Represent Us is the largest anti-corruption grassroots campaign in the country. We bring together conservatives, progressives, and everyone in between to advance anti-corruption electoral reforms to unrig the system. So this is just one of the many policies that we advance at the state and local level. So whether it's automatic voter registration, whether it's ranked choice voting that makes third parties viable, whether it's, and politics more civil, that's another conversation, whether it's publicly funded elections or democracy vouchers to combat the corrupting influence of big money in politics and gerrymandering. What we've seen is this strategy, bypassing the dysfunction at the federal level, to advance a movement at the state and local level, which, by the way, the Constitution actually gives responsibility to the states to actually advance electoral reforms or control electoral law. This has actually been more successful. In 2018, we saw more anti-corruption and pro-democracy reforms won at the state and local level than at any point in U.S. history. And you can check that out at represent.us/wins. So we've seen that by focusing on the issues that actually matter to the people, we've been able to secure wins, and we're approaching this vote by mail movement the same exact way, or fight, I should say, the same exact way. And one can go to represent.us/vote to see exactly what the status of vote by mail is in their state. We can plug them into the right folks at the grassroots level to put pressure on the secretaries of states and governors, and also the congressional leaders to make sure we get the funding to do so. And you cannot.
Yeah, just creating that grassroots movement that gives you that push, that extra added push that you need, so that if there's a county or a state election official who's resistant, who doesn't want to do this, or members of Congress, identified House members, Senate members who are making public statements saying, oh, you know what, well, either vote by mail doesn't work, or or I'm worried about voter fraud, which, just has not been proven at all, empirically or statistically, then, you create this grassroots swell to put pressure on them to to overwhelm their phone lines, overwhelm their email inboxes, saying, well, no, we want this. We want vote by mail.
Exactly, and we're seeing that again across party lines. This is happening, and since we launched this, well, I should say, ramped up this campaign, because we've been calling for vote by mail. I just finished a 700-mile walk from Atlanta to D.C. back in August. Vote by mail was one of the things I called for. But since we launched this ramping up of the vote by mail fight, we've already seen some states bend to pressure and at least allow a temporary option through COVID of voting by mail. And now we're down to just what we call the stalling 7 states: Connecticut, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Texas, who are still holdouts in terms of making sure that this is an option. So we're seeing pressure there, and I again direct folks to represent.us/vote to see where your state falls in terms of vote by mail, and most importantly, or I should say equally as important, you can also check your status in terms of voter registration. Verify and confirm that your voter registration is exactly what you think it is, because I'm sure, Charles, have heard about these reckless voter purges that have been taking place. Millions of folks being purged in the wake of the Supreme Court gutting the Voting Rights Act in 2013, the 1965 Voting Rights Act. So folks can go to represent.us/vote and not only check on the status of vote by mail in your state, but also check and verify your voter registration. That only takes 30 seconds. Put in your information as you think it is, and it'll let you know whether you're registered in the state the way you think you are, and if you're not, then direct you to voter registration. So the second point I really wanted to make is on cost.
Oh, go ahead.
And we've seen, actually, that, interestingly enough, vote by mail actually brings down cost in states. There's several studies that have shown that. We've shown.
Do we know by how much? Because you were saying that in order for vote by mail to work universally nationwide, the federal government needs to pitch in about $2 billion. But do we have ballpark figures on how much? Because I think that's an important point. I think the business case is always important. It's a great counter, particularly to critics, particularly to conservatives out there, Republicans who may say, well, hey, this is not the way to go because it'll take so much in terms of time and bandwidth and resources and money to ramp up. Oh, no, fam. Actually, as a matter of fact, here are the numbers. What are those numbers?
Absolutely. According to Pew says that vote by mail saved Colorado $6 per voter of taxpayer dollars. And Colorado reduced election costs by 40% between 2008 and 2014. Sure, there can be initial costs associated with setting up up-to-date addresses, tracking systems, and verification methods, but vote by mail is cheaper in the long run. And of course, that other, kind of rebuttal, if it's not cost, then the other rebuttal is about, as you said, fraud. But a study by the National Vote at Home Coalition found that out of 100 million votes cast in Oregon since mail-in voting was adopted in 2000, there were only 12 cases of fraud. I would say folks should listen to the leaders on the matter, the local officials who are already doing this. We just had an unrigged roundtable where we brought together the Republican Secretary of State out of Washington and the Democrat Secretary of State out of Colorado. And, hear from them. We actually just did an op-ed with them, with our co-founder, Josh Silver, in Newsweek. Both of those secretaries of state came together with Josh and said, in Colorado and Washington, we ensure our elections are secure, fair, and accurate. Both our states check ballot signatures against the registry and notify voters of discrepancy and errors. We use voting equipment that is not connected to the internet. We hold post-election audits and we built a system to stop fraud and prosecute bad actors. We're not afraid to hold wrongdoers accountable, and it makes our entire system stronger. Last sentence says, we take the security of our elections extremely seriously and can assure you that vote at home increases election security. Now, that's bipartisanship in a time we haven't seen much of it.
You know, I'm real curious about this too, Ronaldo. You know, there's so much to talk about here and unpack, but I've only got you for a couple more minutes.
Yep.
We've got the late primaries or postponed primaries are coming up, and so the primaries are being viewed as sort of a dress rehearsal for the general election. I mean, that's really where like the money is the general election. We want to make sure that this works by the time we reach November 3rd. So how do you get populations, how do you get voters focused on the general election for vote by mail? Because I am concerned about, like, we're having so much of a big conversation about participating in primaries. I mean, the nominees pretty much, I mean, in terms of delegate count and everything else, I mean, the nominees pretty much done on the Democratic side. It's getting people focused on the general. So I wonder, for vote by mail, what's the start date? What's the end date? You understand where I'm getting at? Like, when does the switch, when do we flip the switch on the start date for nationwide vote by mail movement, when everyone across the nation starts voting by mail, and what's the end date in terms of the general election, in terms of the battle for the White House and the battle for the Senate?
Yeah, it's tough to say. I mean, here's what we know. Given all that I've already shared in terms of what it takes to scale this up, you know, in terms of operations per state nationwide, we know that we've got to move with all deliberate speed to get these systems in place. So that's why we're sounding the alarm this way and putting pressure and seeing states drop off one by one. Hopefully we'll get down to one. Again, we're at the stalling 7 now, but hopefully we'll get down to 1 within the next few weeks.
Right.
That said, I think it's important to point to states like Washington and Colorado, because if you recall, I'm sure you do, Charles, Washington was what? One of the epicenter states at the beginning of this pandemic. Yet they had among the highest turnouts during the primary.
Right. They're one of those 5 states with permanent vote by mail. Right.
Exactly. So among all the states that have held a presidential primary thus far, Colorado had the highest active voter turnout in the nation at 46%. And on March 10th, Washington saw turnout of 42%, a whopping 11 points higher than the next highest primary held on that day, even though, again, it was an early epicenter of the COVID-19 outbreak at the time. So I think it's important to point that out, to show that even in the middle of a pandemic, a state like Washington, that was at the early stages, were at the epicenter, had amongst the highest turnout. So I think within a few weeks and certainly no more than a few months, we've got to have these last few states move to a place where they make it an option. And then, you know, we go from there. It just really becomes a pressure campaign. I don't want to entertain the idea of us not getting these 7 states, you know, where they need to be. Within
do
a few months.
we worry about you know, capacity, U.S. Postal Service capacity? You know, because there's already proposed cuts to the Postal Service for obvious reasons. And are you guys having conversations with other types of postal carriers like FedEx?
You know, I don't think the conversation has turned just yet to you know, kind of those safety valves, if you will, you know, or those worst case scenarios with FedEx and UPS, because for as long as we can remember, this nation has had the United States Postal Service. In fact, it's, believe it or not, the one government agency that has the highest trust and confidence of American citizens. You know, so you know, certainly this is a concern of ours that it is, you know, faltering, and that, you know, there seems to be voices in government at the highest level who don't want to give it the federal support that it needs and deserves. But I want to believe, and I have the faith to believe, that an American voice will prevail on this. every poll you look at shows, I mean, Republican, Democrat, Independent, what have you, that they want the U.S. Postal Service to stay. So we're going to continue to have good faith on that. Charles,
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Ronaldo. All right. Yeah, no,
Yes.
good. Ronaldo, thanks for that. Thanks for your patience. Just a real quick, immediate technical glitch. We have to let you go, but I have a bunch of other questions, and this is a good conversation. I appreciate this. We've been talking with Ronaldo Pearson, Director of External Affairs for Represent Us. Go to represent.us for more information there. Also at Ronaldo Pearson for more on what he's up to and to engage him on social media. Ronaldo, thanks for your time. Really appreciate this. So we'll have you back real soon.
Charles, it's been a pleasure. Yes, anytime.
All right. Thank you. Take care. All right. Let's go to break. And when we come back, we'll take phone calls at 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
Are you hungry today? Have your taste buds been sufficiently pampered? Call Eatable Delight for succulent and juicy turkey wings, no-filler crab cakes, or tender smoky beef ribs. You can pick up, curbside, or get delivery in Philadelphia, Montgomery, South Jersey, Delaware, and Bucks County. Call 215-236-3900 or stop by 1540 Wadsworth Avenue. That's 215-236-3900 because even your taste buds deserve pampering.
Support independent black media and join the Forward movement now at 215-425-7875 or visit wordradio.com.
Hey, Dad, your prescription will be ready in just a minute. Hey, Dad, your laundry will be ready in just a minute. Dad, your lunch will be ready in just a minute.
Hey, honey, why don't you take a minute? When you help care for a loved one, you give them as much time as you can. But it's just as important to take time for yourself. AARP can help. Find free care guides to support you and your loved one at aarp.org/caregiving. That's aarp.org/caregiving. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Wurd Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Wurd TV, Wurd app. Also, people leaving comments, questions, and our Facebook Live comment stream. Go to facebook.com/forward. This is a good question Eggy Potter posed, one of our listeners. What about secretaries of state? Can they help? Secretaries of state can absolutely help. They're supposed to help. In fact, that's the role of a secretary of state in a specific state, is to oversee election administration. And it's their job, it's their duty or obligation. That's part of their job description, to make elections as accessible and also to make elections as workable, as functional as possible. Not all secretaries of state do that. Like, for example, look at Georgia. For example, you see the current governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp, who essentially, it's been said, basically stole that election from gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams, who's considered on the running mate, the Joe Biden running mate shortlist during that 2018 gubernatorial election in Georgia. He was the Secretary of State, so that was the fox overseeing the hen house at that point. And so he was engaged, had been engaged for years, had been a part of voter suppression and voter purging activities. That's not what a Secretary of State is supposed to do. But it really depends on the state, and it depends on, because secretaries of state, most secretaries of state are elected positions. So I think some are appointed, some are elected. I forget the exact number. I'll catch that number later on. But if you have a Republican Secretary of State, it's going to take a while. Forget about like overnight or widespread availability of the voting franchise if you have a Republican Secretary of State. That's not a partisan statement. That's just fact, because Republican secretaries of state are just very resistant towards wider or widespread voter access, are engaged in voter suppression and voter purging. So Democratic Party secretaries of state or secretaries of state who are aligned with the Democratic Party are more likely to enhance the voting franchise. So it all depends on the party affiliation of the Secretary of State, and that's unfortunate. It shouldn't be that way, but that's just the way it is. 215-634-8065, toll free, 866-361-0900. Let me go to Bobby out of Southwest who's calling in for a reality check. Bobby?
Hello, good morning to you.
Hey, Bobby, how you doing?
This is my question.
Sure.
First of all, I'm trying to find where one can go, actually physically go to the poll and vote. I personally want to go vote and exercise my right to vote at a polling station because I understand how my ancestors and people were killed and murdered and hung because they wanted just to vote. So this is my thing. I have no problem with voting by mail, that's fine. But I want to go to the poll in the state of Philadelphia and exercise that right. I'm looking on the website for where to vote in Philadelphia because I understand some polls are closed. Here's my argument. My argument is that this great America has figured out how that we can stand in line and shop at grocery stores and wear masks. I understand, and we're waiting in line. Nobody's complaining about that, but they're going to complain about we may have to wait in line to exercise. I don't trust the system 100%. If this, all the accusation against the present president, about how he manipulated to get his vote, I don't know if it's true or if it's not, but it's worth my thinking. So I want to know where are the polling places still going to be open? The physical, or is it because the machines are so malfunctional that this is voting by mail is the thing? I'm not happy with this. We as a people must be able to think for ourselves. Thank
right. And you know what? In terms of the administration of an election, that falls in the lap of local and state elections officials. So that's why vote by mail, for example, Ms. Bobby, that's an option. Remember when the conversation we just had, Ronaldo Pearson. The brother, he just described it as an option. So there will be physical polling sites by the time we get to November 3rd. Because of coronavirus, because of the pandemic that we're in, those polling locations will be limited. So that falls to the city commissioner's office. If you're in Philadelphia, that falls to the Philadelphia city commissioner. And so the Philadelphia city commissioner is going to have to do a better job answering that question. Two big key questions that the Philadelphia City Commissioner's Office will need to answer, and they need to start answering now. They need to have like a very plain-spoken answer for it is, one, can I vote by mail in Philadelphia or in the state of Pennsylvania? How do I go about that? And the second question is what you just asked, and that's where can I go vote? Where will the physical polling locations be? If I want to exercise that option, if I feel more comfortable, if I'm fine with putting a face mask on, putting some gloves on, I feel that I can minimize my risk. I can mitigate the risk by going to a polling location, and already the measures have taken place where city officials have made those locations safe. They've disinfected them. They've also embarked on the necessary public health protocols and measures. Okay, well, I want to go. Philadelphia, the city commissioner's office. Go to PhiladelphiaVotes.com, by the way, for more information there, and also to put your address in and to find your polling location. The Philadelphia City Commissioner's Office is going to have to do a much better job of answering that clearly and plainly in a plain-spoken way, or making that kind of information accessible. I don't see that effort taking place right now. Everyone's, and that was a question I didn't have a chance to ask Ronaldo. I want to bring him back. He was saying, well, we haven't talked to FedEx and UPS yet until the worst-case scenario. Bruh, the worst case scenario was here, right? I mean, the worst case scenario has already happened. We're in the middle of the worst case scenario. That's how we have to act. City Hall, the city commissioner's office, with respect to this election, they need to start acting like this is the worst case scenario, because it is. It's not business as usual. Let me go to Maurice out of Southwest, who's calling in for a reality check. Maurice?
Good morning, Charles.
Hey, good morning.
I want to start off with an apology. Last week when I say black on black crime and you're not with that, and I tried to talk like I know better than you. That just was my opinion. I'm sorry I did that, but that's just my opinion.
Okay.
And I just want to say I'm man enough to say that I was wrong with that. but I feel so strongly about it because I work the prison system, and I talk to brothers up there, and I said you wasn't robbing nobody. And
I remember that conversation. You know what it was, Maurice? I think we were talking about law enforcement getting college degrees or having better education credentials.
Right. But I just wanted to say that I felt once I thought about it because I like talking to you. I thought I was kind of out of line on that.
No, I don't think. I do appreciate the apology, Maurice. I do. I don't think it's necessary. I think you raised some good points. I think it's a great discussion. I appreciate you engaging me on it. Yeah,
makes my mind stronger. Makes my mind stronger when I verbally duel with you. So I like that. But
makes mine too. That's why I like it. I appreciate it.
Let me get to your point about City Hall because I noticed none of the shows want to talk about city council at all. They want to skip over that, talk about church. So I want to get to the point. The point of it is they're playing a shell game. They're taking advantage of this virus and using it against us. The city, I brought it up 1,000 times, had got $96 million to play with on this virus from the government. We have no accounting of what they spent that money on, and they're not telling us. Yeah. Every time they have a city hall meeting, they're supposed to have the voice of the people, but they're using this virus to say, well, we can't do that right now. No, this is city government. City government doesn't change no matter what's going on. You are paid to listen to our opinion about what we like and don't like. You just don't be changing the dates and making your bills and passing this and that, and we have no knowledge of it until we're out in the street. Right now, this city is number one gentrification in the nation as far as I'm concerned because down the bottom, North Philly has been totally taken over by our so-called black people in City Hall. They know we don't know the 20-year plan. They already know the 20-year plan for this city, and the 20-year plan is to get us out. That's why there's so much crime in the city. And believe me, you know it and I know it. If white people were being killed every other day or every day, the city would be under lockdown right now. We would probably be under curfew. But because it's black people, nobody cares.
Yeah.
And I'm so tired of us skipping over it and pretending like these people have our. And you said you want them to be more transparent. Yeah. When have they ever been transparent? Never. When they did the thing with Wilson Good, they just popped up out of nowhere and put that up. You notice nobody ever interviews the people that lived on Old Sage Avenue. Everybody wants to talk about move. But what about the people that lost everything they owned, pets, money, everything they had? Nobody talks about the 68 homes that are gone like they don't count. And I'm so sick of it that we just avoid certain situations we don't want to talk about. And I'm talking about me too. I include myself in there. And I'm so tired of us letting these politicians. Back in the day when I was growing up, politicians lived in your neighborhood. You had to look for them. You seen them every day. But today,
so you know what? And to your point, I think you're raising some good points there. I do think, I mean, in all fairness, it is a very tough, it's a very difficult moment for everyone, you know, for residents and even for like the legislators, city council folks. But to your point, you're raising a good point because I do worry about that. I am concerned about that. Like, is City Hall, like we're talking about the city council right now at this moment, are they making that effort to make all of this activity as visible as possible and as accessible as possible? Like, for example, the budget hearings that are taking place next week. Okay, well, I don't know yet, and maybe I've got to dig a little bit more. I don't know yet what the process is for public comment, to get, you know, and that's what I mean. Like, so why should I have to, I should have to immediately, that should be an immediate thing or an immediate nugget of information that should be available. Hey, y'all, here are the budget hearings. This is the email address for you to send your questions or to sign up for public comment. Boom, that's it. You know, like I shouldn't have to dig for that, right? That should be something that's right away. But what we do know, Maurice, is that only about a quarter of that $85 million has been spent, just a quarter. So there's about $65 million to go. So they haven't even really done that good of a job of spending that money as fast. They're being very cautious. city administration. They're being very cautious and very slow. And you can make the argument methodical about how they're trying to spend this money. I don't know, but it appears that, I mean, based on some recent reporting, only just a quarter of that $85 million emergency appropriation has been spent. Let me take a break. Maurice, thanks so much. I think you're raising good points. I want to address those and others as we get further into the day. Let's take a break, and when we come back on the other side, phone lines remain open, 215-634-8065, toll-free 866-361-0900. Mike Green, economic strategist, is coming up next. We are having a Mike Green session. Phone lines are open while we talk with him. We're going to talk about unemployment, unpacking those numbers, and how we should proceed. How do we live in an age of pandemic and very high unemployment? That's a big issue. We'll be talking with Mike Green next here on Reality Check midday, Tuesday, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Wurd TV, Wurd app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Holistic health information every weekend with Dr. Paul. Saturdays during the Holistic Hour at 9 a.m. and Sundays during the Green Hour at 3 p.m. right here on WURD 96.1 FM and 900 AM. Streaming live at wordradio.com and on the Wurd Radio app.
Hi, this is Councilwoman Cindy Bass, and every day during the COVID-19 pandemic, our frontline workers are out there serving us. Bus drivers and grocery clerks, sanitation workers, police, firefighters, and of course, healthcare workers. They're taking care of us, and now let's take care of them. Wear a mask when you go outside. Protect yourself and protect others too. We can do this. Let's mask up, Philly. Help stop the spread.
You're never completely ready to adopt a teen.
For late nights writing English papers.
For your teen's music taste.
For dinners, where they talk more on their phone than with you.
For the first time, they call you Mom.
You're never completely ready to adopt a teen, and you can't imagine the reward.
To learn more about adopting a teen, visit adoptuskids.org.
Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
In recognition of 35 years, join Wurd Radio for Remember Move on Wurd, presented by Ulysses Butch Slaughter and Brother Shamari. A day-long broadcast that will feature an in-depth examination of the 1985 Move bombing that continues to test the soul of the city. Get ready for new insights on the Move organization and that tragic day in 1985. This Wednesday, March 13th, exclusively on Wurd Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on wordradio.com and the Wurd Radio app, and on Wurd TV via Facebook. This special broadcast is supported by the Resolve Reporting Collaborative.
Pico has many ways to help you lower your energy usage and save money at home. Here's one. If your heating and cooling system is more than 20 years old, it may be time for your contractor to replace it with a high-efficiency Energy Star certified model. You'll get a rebate from Pico and save on your monthly electric bill. You'll find a list of new heating and cooling system rebates at pico.com/rebates. Or you can call 1-888-5-PICO-SAVE for all the details. Plus, find instant discounts on smart thermostats and more at pico.com/marketplace. There's free shipping on orders over $49.
Now, with more clarity, this is Wurd Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Streaming live at wordradio.com. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Wurd Radio and wordradio.com.
Okay, we're waiting on Mike Green. Mike Green, economic strategist, also founder, chief principal at Scale Up Partners, scaleuppartners.com. For more than that, we bring back Mike Green occasionally here on Reality Check to not only break down the economic numbers of the day, but to make sense of them and also to give us some solutions, give us some strategies moving forward. So that's why we bring Mike Green on. So phone lines are open. We will be able, this is an open discussion, 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. 215-634-8065, toll free, 866-361-0900. So, going back to that discussion I was having with Maurice earlier, I think Maurice is making some good points. He's making some fine points. I don't want us to get into a session of unnecessarily trashing city leaders or unnecessarily disparaging or trashing, beating down folks in City Hall or City Council, because it's a very difficult time for everyone. On a lot of levels, it is unprecedented. It is a very unprecedented environment for city leaders, for any politicians. And this is not just happening in Philly. This is happening everywhere. It's a very, very unique, very difficult, unprecedented time for policymakers to maneuver through, to navigate through. So everywhere you're finding policymakers are struggling with finding their stride. And I'm having those conversations on a near daily basis with policymakers or state and local legislators of some stripe who are describing the challenges that they're going through. So it's a remarkably tough moment for all of us, right? It's a remarkably tough, and you know, they're residents and human beings and heads of households too, their parents, where they're taking care of loved ones. So they've got to navigate the pandemic crisis. Some of them are sick, where they have loved ones who are sick. I'm not asking for, and I'm not caping for sympathy of politicians at the moment, but I'm just saying that everyone, including them, because they're going through some of the same struggles that we're all going through it, right? So, but to Maurice's point, City Hall, or City Council more specifically, they will need to tweak, they will need to refine, they will need to step up a little bit on their PR, their public relations and visibility game. They're going to have to do that and operate a little bit better. I sometimes, and this is where I frequently talk about that constant disconnect. We've seen it throughout history in terms of governance. There's always this disconnect between what I call the grass tops, which are your political leaders, your elected officials, and the grassroots, the people who are on the streets, the residents, the average citizens, the voters, the people who put them in office in the first place. Elected officials, policymakers really need to make an effort towards closing that gap. There's too much of a gap, especially in a city like Philadelphia, and I've seen this all throughout. I've seen this even when I was a kid, when I was a young child. I saw it playing out, and it worried me, it concerned me enough where I entered the space of politics as a way to kind of solve that problem, that constant gap between grass tops and grassroots. There's this disconnect, and elected officials, people in the political space, in the political class, they need to take that gap a lot more seriously. They need to pay attention to it a lot more earnestly than they do. Sometimes they don't take it seriously, and you do that, I'm talking to you, elected leaders, you do that at your own peril. And then suddenly you get this backlash, and you're wondering, where's that coming from? Well, you didn't close the gap. You didn't find ways to plug or reconnect grass tops and grassroots, and then all these misunderstandings happen. Then there's these perceptions that you're not being as visible, you're not being as transparent, you're trying to hide things, even when that may not be the case. I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying you have to do what you can to manage those types of impressions, those perceptions. Let me go to Joe out of Germantown, who's joining us for a reality check. Joe?
Hi, Brother Charles and Brother Trey. How y'all good brothers doing today?
All right, good. How are you doing, Brother Joe? Good to have you.
I'm doing fine. I'll praise be to Allah. Real quick, Brother Charles, I want to address Brother Maurice and Brother Jacob. First, Brother Jacob. Brother Jacob's not listening to you. And as everybody knows, Brother Charles, I'm not a big Joe Biden fan. I make that no clear, but I would be willing to vote for him over the dumbwit that's in the White House now. But see, but Jacob not listening to you and stuff. You can't keep on saying how bad Trump is. You try to make that point to Jacob. We all know how bad Trump is, but you gotta have people, whether they're black, white, Latino, gay, lesbian, or straight. You gotta give people something to vote for, as opposed to keep saying how bad Trump is. You gotta put your policies out there so people look at your policies and what you're offering to the American people, so they'd be more inclined to vote for you. But you keep on saying, show how bad Trump is. All you doing is giving Trump free for the fish. So you're doing a commercial for you Joe Biden, Charles. You're doing a commercial. You got Joe Biden. You got Trump's picture all over there. His followers don't care about the stuff that he do. They're going to support him anyway. So, and even people that's kind of on the fence, if all they see is Trump out there being visible and fighting, not being as visible, they're going to be more inclined to vote for Trump. So you can't keep on saying how bad he is. You got to start saying what you stand for and what you're going to offer to the American people as an alternative to Donald Trump. And keep saying how bad. Well, everybody know how bad he is. You know, come on, man. You know, and like you try to tell Jacob, if the Democrats stay with their strategy, they're going to lose.
I think Jacob understands that. I think that's. I don't want to, I don't want callers to get into the habit too, Joe. But I understand your point too, Joe. I think you're both right. And I think there has to be there has to be an equal balance and equal. We should be identifying and responding against the evil before us, right? And so, I mean, this is also a fight. It's a resistance to a political resistance to the evil in front of us. I agree with that, and so we have to always call that out. But to your point, we also have to know, okay, well, what are we voting for? Like, if we're going in the direction of this alternative, will that work for us? You know, we just want to make sure, like, we're not making another mistake. Another mistake piled on top of the mistake that's already in front of us.
That's my point, Charles, because the way they're going right now, Charles, they keep on with this going after, because I think everybody in the world knows, unless you're stupid, you know Trump is a bad dude. He's a bad character. But you got to show that you're alternative to him instead of keep just saying he's bad, you know? And real quick, now, honestly, at the end of the day, I can't see, like, anything. I can't see Democrats, I can't see Joe Biden being as evil as what we have currently in the White House and the Senate. I mean, I just can't see it. So I think it's I'm completely convinced it's the better alternative at this point. And just let's get it done. Let's get the no number. And Charles, they may well be, Charles, but you had to make that point to the American people. You just can't keep on saying how bad the other guy is. What is you offering? That's what you got to do.
Right.
You know,
You just got to do that. You got to take that extra step. Right.
He didn't say how bad. Obama said, I got audacity of hope. I'm offering hope and change. Now, he didn't fulfill all the things that I wanted and stuff. But the point is, he ran a perfect campaign. That's one thing I can't take away from Obama. He ran a perfect campaign. He made sure he told everybody what he was going to do and the change he wanted to bring to America. And if Biden was wise, he'll adopt the same strategy. Because if he keeps with the same strategy he's using now, Brother Charles, he's going to lose. And lastly, Charles, real quick on the move thing. I agree with Maurice on some points, but you can never put a measure on people losing their life. I got friends that live out there. I was out there. Me and Brother Malik was out there all day. After we was up there when they dropped the bomb. And I know friends of mine that lost their houses and lost things, but it still don't compare to people that lost it. Like, children was burnt up, man. Children was burnt up, and they were shot back in the house. All them kind of things happened. And you had politicians that should have been held accountable. Like I said, my whole thing is that people like William Richmond, the police commissioner at racist Gregory Sample and others, these people had total disdain for Mayor Good, and that's why I blame Mayor Good at, because Mayor Good should have let the American people, especially the black community, know that these racists didn't have no respect for me, because nobody gonna never convince me that Wilson gave the permission to drop. He took responsibility, but he put those racist white folks that he was in charge of, they had no respect for him as a black man, his leadership, and they dropped the bomb in spite of what he may have wanted them to do. And so he didn't want them to escalate it.
And that's gonna haunt Mayor Good till for the rest of his days. It's gonna haunt him.
No doubt.
It's haunting him now. You know, it's gonna have to.
Charles, I'm gone. Charles.
Yes.
Real quick, Charles. See, Charles, what black people have to do in politics, Charles, like I always say, be honest with the black community. We know you're up against a bunch of white racists. At the very least, Charles, be the town crier. Say, look, black folks, I'm trying to do the best. I'm up against these white racists. And then we can rally around you and take you across the finish line. But if you don't level with us, Brother Charles, we can't help you. We can't help you help us if you don't level with us.
Hey, Joe, let me let you go. No, some fine points that you're making. I got to let you go. I want to take one another listener. We have Stanley out of North Philly who's calling in for a reality check. Stanley?
Yes, hello, Brother Charles. How are you today?
All right, Brother Stanley. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate you.
Yeah, I've been following, and I'm glad you spoke about the money that has been given to us to consider in reference to the budget, the $85 million that you spoke about, that only a quarter of it has been spent, and no accountability for it, the $400 and something thousand that was given to council towards the coronavirus. And also, I did some research and found out that the stimulus package, the city got over $276 million from the stimulus package, and then we had a $439 million surplus as of October the 28th, and now we are told on April the 27th that we $640 million deficit, and the city controller in that article speaks about avoiding layoffs. And when I did some research into what they're talking about cutting, they're talking about cutting the least of us. And now we have also in the Congress a bill being considered for $1 trillion stimulus package, $500 billion going to the states and $500 billion going to the cities. And we're not getting accountability of where the money that they say that we don't have, and where's this money going, and we just being given information without nobody from council or nobody from the city controller, and them coming and explaining these inconsistencies with these finances.
Yeah, and so from what we know, once again, about a quarter of that emergency appropriation, that's the $85 million that was initially appropriated for pandemic response. So about 15 million of that focused primarily on city payroll. On a lot of time and a half, the city workforce being paid time and a half up to a particular point. It was for about a 12-day period where city workers were getting time and a half, and then the city decided, the mayor's office, the city manager decided we can't keep doing that. That's unsustainable. So, because city workers are going to have to understand, particularly when I think they're supposed to be, I think based on the original budget, the original 2021 budget or FY 2021 budget, or based on negotiations between the city and the union, there was a 2 to 2.5% pay raise that was supposed to take effect on May 1st. I'm not clear on whether or not that pay raise took place yet, but city workers and unions are going to have to understand it's a very difficult time. It's going to be a difficult time for everyone, and everyone's going to feel some hurt, but we got to feel that hurt together. We all have to understand that we're all in the same boat, and we need to get a grasp. I think there are like three things that need to happen here. One is we need to get a grasp on, okay, well, how exactly was the $85 million spent? Okay, well, we understand that 3/4 of it has not been spent yet. About $65 million of that $85 million has not been spent yet. As far as we know, as of today, 1/4 of it has been spent. Well, how are we going to spend the rest of it? Is it just going to be used for payroll? Okay, well, we do have that issue of low wage city workers. We have that issue of, for example, sanitation workers not getting the adequate protections, not getting hazard pay. So can some of it be used for that, or some sort of stipend, bonus stipend, to properly compensate them for their time for having to go out there and pay for trash? I'm just using that as an example. But so that's the first track. We need to keep track of that. Second track is we need to keep track of the overall, because $85 million is just a pinch, is just a slice of the larger overall citywide $5 billion budget. Okay, well, we've had to revise that. The mayor just revised that a couple of weeks ago, right? So we need, that's what I'd be more interested in, and I'd be more curious about $5 billion versus the $85 million, even though we need transparency and oversight with that. So what's the plan for the $5 billion? And that's why we're going to have to pay attention to that series of budget hearings that are taking place. What's the plan? What's the revision? What's the plan for that $5 billion? Thirdly, it's just making sure that city leaders are acting as, that we're all acting as a village, not just city leaders, but city workers, residents. We're all understanding, we're all in the same boat, we're all faced with similar challenges. The extent or the degree of those challenges varies according to household, according to your income, how much you have in your savings, whether or not you're employed or not. But it's really important here that we're all facing this as a community, as a collective, as a village in order to get through it. And so city workers, unions are going to have to understand, hey, and this is where the transparency component comes in. The more transparent city officials are about those top line figures, those top line numbers, we're not saying, obviously a lot of residents don't have the kind of bandwidth or the capacity to understand those very sophisticated budget numbers, but just provide folks with like the top line numbers, like what's being appropriated, what's being spent, Where is it going to go? What are those top line numbers? Being transparent about that, that helps with that conversation. Stanley, I think you're still there. You got some parting thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I'd like to add something to it. Number one is I just mentioned about what's being considered in the House of Representatives and hopefully through the whole Congress about the $500 billion for the states and the $500 billion for city and local government. And I just think it's premature for the city to come up with statistics about being $649 million in the upcoming deficit, talk about layoffs and stuff like that. When you had a $439 million surplus a month in October, and you got over $270 million from this present stimulus, from the past stimulus, and then you got money that's floating around that's not being accountable for. Had you not mentioned that about the $85 million and how much was spent, all this is not being given to us. And I hope someone from the city council or representatives to come to your show and start explaining this, especially this $649 million projected deficit, because the whole city budget is no more than $490 billion. So how in 30 or 40 days you become that much of a deficit after having that much of a surplus is not adding up. In reference
I feel you on that. I think you're onto something there, because I mean you've got like the 400 million plus that's in surplus, the the 200 million I think ballpark received from the feds. What about money from that was that voters approved? What was it in the last election for those municipal bonds? For municipal building upgrades. Might be time. Is there a way to redirect that money? That's close to $200 million, right? So maybe we need to redirect those funds to close that, but at least close the budget gap for a year. So that's a budget gap of about a year. That's a deficit. That's close to about a $650 million budget deficit that they are projecting for a fiscal year, one fiscal year, 12 months. Okay, well, here's how you close that so the city can, and within a year, we'll have maybe the economy starts finding a bit of a stride. It doesn't completely repair itself, but it's in a much better position a year from now, a fiscal year from now, than it is right now, right? And also vaccines. We should be expecting vaccines by the end of this year, top of 2021. So then once the vaccines go out into the public takes it, everything starts stabilizing a bit more. Things get back to, at least economically, get a little bit back to normal. So I think you're onto something, Stanley. I think, see, once again, once we get those top line figures, we understand, hey, these are where these caches, this is where these buckets of money are. Like, why are we talking about increasing taxes? Why are we talking about layoffs or furloughs? Why are we talking about cuts of this sort or that sort? Okay, well, let's look at where the inefficiencies are. Let's identify those. Let's cut those out, make some savings. I think you're onto something. And so we got to keep track of those numbers. And this is why it's important for City Hall, for the mayor and City Council to be very transparent, because the more people get the impression that numbers are being hidden, the more people are going to get angry. And in a moment like this, in a climate like this, that's a recipe for not just voter angst, or people being angry and anxious and nervous. It's a recipe for social unrest. It frankly is, especially with so many people dealing with the moment that we're in and so many people being unemployed and jobless. People already filed for unemployment claims. You don't want to add fuel to the fire. You really don't. And so I think you're onto something with that, Stanley. Thanks for calling. That's something I want to look at. I'm gonna look at that a little bit more closely, and maybe write up something. And the Philadelphia Citizen about that shortly. But I know the Philadelphia Citizen is looking at that too. That's why we questioned yesterday, like, why is the city raising taxes? We had, I think it was Councilman Isaiah Thomas, his office reached out, and he had proposed a way to stabilize the city budget without raising taxes. He put a proposal on there. There's no need to raise taxes. City controller saying that we don't need to be raising taxes in a moment like this in other cities. And see, and I'm not saying this because it's like the thing to say. It's the flavor of the day. It's the flavor rhetorical statement of the day. We're seeing what other cities are doing, right? They're not raising taxes. They're cutting, but they're not raising taxes. So why is, that's the other key question here. When everyone's hurting like that, you want to hurt people more. So the, raising taxes, it seems very punitive. It's like you're punishing people. You're punishing people for going through the pandemic. So, okay, so we're going to charge them more. We're going to raise taxes more. So let me take a break. And when we come back, I'm not sure what happened to Mike Green, so we'll get him at some other point. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we have Michelle Watley, political strategist. We're headed into a strategist segment here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Wurd TV, Wurd app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Right now, nurses are on the front lines, delivering direct care to those fighting the virus, supporting patients isolated from family members, implementing telehealth into their practices, and providing leadership of hospital systems and public health agencies. You can let nurses know you care with a message of gratitude by using the hashtag #GratitudeForNurses on Twitter and Instagram, or by posting a message at 2020nurseandmidwife.org.
He's back.
This is Reverend Al Sharpton.
Keeping it real with the Reverend Al Sharpton.
In times like these, we have to stay connected.
At a brand new time. Monday through Thursday, 9 p.m. till midnight.
I'm excited that Keeping It Real returns to WURD.
Keeping it real with the Reverend Al Sharpton. Monday through Thursday, 9 p.m. till midnight.
Keep it locked to WURD 96.1 FM, 900 AM. WURDradio.com.
No fear, just facts. WURD.
Reality Check
with Charles Ellison right now on Wurd Radio and WURDradio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check. We're waiting on Michelle Watley. Before we get Michelle Watley, let's just keep the phone lines open. I'm just seeing if Michelle Watley is available. At Michelle L. Watley from Wurd there. She was a former director of African American outreach for the 2016 Bernie Sanders campaign. She's also been doing quite a bit of work there in the field as far as voter mobilization. I think she's doing some work as well out in the Midwest for All Voting is Local, if I'm not mistaken. But go to at Michelle L. Watley for more there. Political strategist, consultant, and she now joins us. She joins us now by phone here on Reality Check. Michelle, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing today? Are you doing well?
Yes, staying safe, doing well. So I hope you're safe, as I assume you are if you're here with us. So you're giving us a little bit of your time today, so I assume all is good with you. Thanks for joining us. Also, you are founder of the Griot Group. So the Griot, once again, go to at Michelle L. Watley from Wurd there. So Michelle, I know you're kind of watching the political winds, the political landscape unfold. So let's talk a little bit about that. I wonder, right? There's this perception about Joe Biden lacking energy, that he's running a quiet campaign with no urgency, and so how can he sort of defy those perceptions or resist those perceptions? What's the better way for him to run for president right now?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I don't think anyone has the answer to how to run for president, much less school board representative in the age of COVID. This
right.
is new for everybody on a number of levels. But I don't know that I would argue that he's running a quiet campaign. I think that with all of the noise in the media that COVID has created and generated, it would be hard for him or anyone else for that matter to kind of cut through that noise, A. B, he's been able to win and get the Democratic nomination with a lot less fanfare, so to speak. He won a number of states in which he hadn't even shown up. He didn't have offices, and he beat out competitors who were, juggernauts in many different ways. The Sanders campaign arguably was one of the loudest, most boisterous, seemed to have a real grassroots movement behind it, and he was still able to beat out a candidate like Senator Sanders or Bloomberg and Steyer, who had money to burn in media and digital media and the like. So I don't know that what he's doing at the moment, running the campaign from his basement, so to speak, is necessarily wrong. I also think the campaign is trying to prevent opportunities for unforced errors also. If he doesn't have to be out, he doesn't have to be out in front of the people at this moment because there are greater issues at hand. It doesn't make sense for him to put himself in that position to speak and perhaps say something he would not want to say. And so, I don't know that we know how to run a campaign in COVID, but I don't know that the strategy at this point is the worst idea.
You know, you kind of raise a point there because, and maybe we're overthinking it, right? And maybe we are sort of, in a way, overcomplicating or adding a layer of complexity that's not there in terms of how voters are thinking through this moment. Maybe we're being a little bit too sophisticated, or we're wanting too much. Maybe voters are really, and that's that was the power of Biden through the primary, is just that that sense of pragmatism, right? That, you know, this sort of hyper practicality that he can kind of, in a very crystal clear way, simplify the moment that we're in, and it's just like, okay, well, this is who we're going to go with to just get us through this moment. Maybe it's just that. It's just we're underestimating just how anxious people are. Even they were already anxious in the moment before COVID-19 hit. They're still anxious. They just want an end to it. Maybe that's what this is. Maybe, you know, it's just like we really don't understand just how practical voters are being about this 2020 moment that we're in.
I would agree with that. I think that voters in general are just overwhelmed. If you're not inundated with all of the mess that is Donald Trump, you're now having to deal with this unknown virus that is, you know, that's taking our loved ones from us, or could, you know, is causing great harm, or has forced you to lose your job or your business. You know, voters may be in a space of trying to figure out, you know, if they'll have a place to live when this is all over. There are such pressing issues in front of voters at the moment that practicality may be what actually cuts through the noise, right? Like something that feels familiar and easy to understand. And so, yeah, I think folks like you and I who live and breathe this stuff, we have a very different sense of where the average everyday voter is, and the average everyday voter is going to be making the decision on who runs the presidential administration here in November. And if they are inundated with other things at the moment, it doesn't make sense for you as a candidate to be in front of them with issues that are not as pressing.
You know, I thought about that the other day, too, because voters were burned in 2016 by getting too immersed in the weeds and the details of campaign languaging and messaging and all the misinformation that was out there, bots. I think to a degree, well, at least I know I am, right? And I know others I'm speaking to are, but I think to a degree, I think voters did learn lessons from 2016, right? I think that there are a lot of voters out there who instinctively know how to navigate around the barriers and roadblocks and hurdles of misinformation. And so, you know, once again to that point, that earlier point a few seconds ago about just sticking to the basics. Like, this is probably going to be, and it'll surprise a lot of us in this space, this will be a very sticking to basics election. Like, I know for a fact, a lot of people, they know how to scope out or how to eye out. I mean, if you don't know how to do it by now, after 2016 and 4 years of the Trump presidency, if you don't know how to scope out a bot on Twitter, I don't know what to tell you, right? I can't help you, right? I mean, you should be able to scope out. I mean, I will admit, I mean, there were a couple of Twitter accounts where even they fooled me. And I'm a practitioner in the space. I'm an expert in the space. And they probably, you know, they fooled a lot of us. But now you can scope it out. You're like, oh, yeah, that's a bot. Like, I saw one today. I was like, oh, that's a bot. It's like exactly. I'm not even going to follow that, right?
Right. Voters have learned. I don't know that politicos, for lack of a better word, have. I think we're still looking to, you know, leverage, you know, and let let data and polls and all these things guide us. We are the ones still looking at the political landscape from that lens. Although, 2016 clearly showed that polls should not be the Northern Star, and that a lot of the things that we thought were tried and true tactics and theories that had gone disproven for a number of years, were shattered. And so I think this will be an interesting time to see what actually prevails as far as tactics and strategy, and whether we have a clear sense of where voters are. And I think you're right. Voters have learned how to navigate the landscape, and they are more astute than we would like to give them credit for.
Right. We don't give voters enough credit in general. Just having as a general rule or having this general conversation, we're not giving. We tend to make that mistake as political pundits, commentators, practitioners, thinkers. We tend to underestimate the intelligence of voters all the time. We tend to think like the mass of voters are stupid, and and we do that we do that at to our own fault. I mean, we really should stop underestimating them, and obviously there are clearly less than intelligent voters that are, that's why we're in this mess that we're in now. But I'm just saying, like, a lot of voters out there, we should understand that it may not be as complicated as we make it seem, whereas certain polls are showing. I'm real curious about those strategies and tactics, those methods, how Democrats especially need to go about this and removing the incumbent and also retaking the Senate as well. You had this recent column from Washington Post columnist Eugene Robinson, who was arguing for Democrats to rip from the Republican playbook. He's not the only one that's called for that or argued for that. A lot of us will sometimes say, hey, you know what, Democrats need to check out the Republican playbook on how to win a campaign, how to win an election. They need to go for the jugular. And so, like, don't go high, just go low, get in the mud. What do you think of that? Is that kind of the direction that Democrats should take in 2020?
That's a good question. I think that me personally, I think yes, like people need to see the party fight for the things that they value. But I think there's a larger opportunity to really just redefine what it means to be a Democrat and lead with that. I think that over, the last few campaign cycles and administrations, it has become the definition of what it means to be a Democrat and what we value and the type of candidates that we run and the candidates that we support. All of that has been made very murky, and I think for the average voter, it is unclear where Democrats stand and what they stand for. And when there's not a clear Northern Star to follow, then you get lost, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. For all that Trump is, it was clear what he stood for, what he was about, and what you were getting as a candidate. And even when Republicans didn't agree, you'd have a few get out and say they didn't like the way Trump was running the campaign. Everybody fell in line. I think you saw some of that once Biden got past South Carolina Super Tuesday. You started to see the party coalesce behind him as a candidate. And if you look at polls, we just kind of, talked about polls, but there is some merit in polls. Biden at the moment leads in every national and swing state poll. So I think there's something to be said for having a clear message about where the party stands, what a voter gets if they vote for this party and or candidate, and sticking to that. And we haven't had that. The party hasn't had that in, I would argue, in at least the last two, campaign cycles. And that maybe is just a better approach. We expect Republicans to go low. We know where they're going to go, but where do Democrats go, right?
Right.
That is not clear, and that's why you can't get the support of voters and the base behind candidates in ways we need them, to be behind our candidates so we can see wins.
And maybe it's not even a matter of going low or going high or whatever. It's just like, go win. Like, go to, take the stand. Like, Like just it's as simple as just keep it simple. We can't campaign like we used to, and we talked about this a few moments ago, but I want to revisit this in terms of digital strategies and techniques, some of which you're saying as well out there on the on the campaign trail, and it's a new kind of campaign trail. There's really no trail because we're in pandemic. A lot of us have to stay at home. Even as we have gradual reopening, folks are going to be very cautious, and depending on where you live, the city or the state, everyone's going to be very cautious about going back outside. So what are the more effective digital techniques? And then going to a New York Times article that Liz Smith, former Obama campaign strategist, also was attached to Pete Buttigieg, and she was arguing, okay, this is the way for Joe Biden to win out of his basement. In your mind, what are the effective digital techniques or alternative digital techniques if we can't campaign in person in 2020?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think digital organizing becomes key, and that's been an argument long within these circles of the role and effectiveness of digital organizing and digital campaigning. And you're starting to see campaigns shift to spend more resources towards digital organizing. But if COVID doesn't teach us anything else, it teaches us the importance of being able to digitally organize. And that could be as simple as developing your social media, digital media following, utilizing digital media to get information out about the campaign or candidate, and then utilizing digital technologies to reach out to voters in a more direct and informal way, so to speak. So whether that is peer-to-peer texting programs, utilizing Zoom and holding digital town halls, virtual canvassing and knocking on Facebook profiles instead of knocking on actual doors, right? Because as you mentioned, the campaign trail is traditionally paved by the path of walking, to voters and knocking on their doors. We don't have that opportunity. But I also think back to one of our earlier discussions about practicality and tried and true tactics. Calling people on the phone and mail also becomes important. People are at home, they're going to get their mail. People are at home, they're going to answer their phones. Voters who are older voters are typically more reliable voters. That's the theory in science. Those voters may have a landline and may be likely to answer because they're sitting at home at the moment. So yes, you should take advantage of digital strategies and technologies to reach your voters. But I think some of the tried and true practical ways of reaching people by phone and through mail will be just as effective.
Yeah, don't underestimate the old school. Don't underestimate the phone bank, the value of the phone bank, right? Yeah, that's also a tried and true way to replace that door knock. So it's got to be a good, reasonable, and effective mix. We've been talking with Michelle Watley, founder of the Griot Group, also former African American Outreach Director for the 2016 Bernie Sanders campaign. Also, she's already on the ground doing work with a number of organizations. I think All Voting is Local, too, included in that mix of the work that you're doing. Michelle, go to @Michelle L. Watley on Twitter. Can't forget that name, so can't forget that Twitter handle if you'd like to engage her there. She joins us, as she occasionally does, for our regular strategist segment. Michelle, always good to talk with you.
Good to talk with you, too. Be safe and be well.
All right. You be safe, too. Thanks so much for that. All right. Take care. And let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to open up phone lines at 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900. 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let's take a break, and we'll be right back.
If you want to start your morning with mindfulness, motivation, and inspiration, tune in to Daybreak with me, Helana, here on WURD Radio, Monday through Friday from 6 to 7 a.m. I'm a health and wellness coach with over 15 years experience helping people to transform their lives. On the show, we talk health and wellness 360, from getting your mind right to getting your money right. So let's rise and shine together right here on WURDradio.com, 96.1 FM, 900 on your AM dial on Daybreak every morning.
Nina Ahmed waitressed and struggled before becoming a biomedical scientist, finding new cures to disease. Unlike Donald Trump, she'll use facts and data, not fear and division. Nina came here alone, surviving a violent war as a child. She witnessed the death and destruction caused by assault weapons, and as Auditor General, she'll fight to ban them to protect our children. Nina Ahmed worked for President Obama and then served as deputy mayor of Philadelphia, where she fought to make sure our voices were heard. As president of the Philly chapter of the National Organization for Women, she led fights against discrimination and wage inequality. If elected Auditor General, Nina Ahmed would be the first person of color ever elected statewide in Pennsylvania. You can vote in person on June 2nd or by visiting votespa.com, votespa.com, to get your mail-in ballot. Don't let COVID-19 steal your vote.
Paid for by Nina for PA.
Be heard. Want another way to join the conversation? Follow us on social media using the hashtag #OnWord. Be heard. Stay connected to Wurd Radio. Independent Black media. In recognition of 35 years, join Wurd Radio for Remember Move on Word, presented by Ulysses Butch Slaughter and Brother Shamari. A day-long broadcast that will feature an in-depth examination of the 1985 Move bombing that continues to test the soul of the city. Get ready for new insights on the Move organization and that tragic day in 1985. This Wednesday, March 13th, exclusively on Wurd Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on WurdRadio.com and the Wurd Radio app, and on Wurd TV via Facebook. This special broadcast is supported by the Resolve Reporting Collaborative. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Wurd Radio and WurdRadio.com.
All right, let's hit those phone lines. 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900. Also, I'll check out those comments and maybe questions too in the Facebook live stream. Let's go to Gary out of Southwest, who's calling for a reality check. Gary?
Hey, Charles. How are you, brother?
Hey, what's happening, brother? All right.
Hey,
good to hear you.
I'm good. How's your family doing, man?
Good, good. Thank you for asking.
Good.
Everyone's good. Yeah, everyone's
good,
healthy.
Man. Good.
Yeah, so far so good.
Yeah.
Can't complain there.
Yeah. You know, earlier when you were discussing or talking about this huge budget deficit the city has now, and we're talking about tax increases, in particular our real estate taxes.
Right.
The numbers just don't add up to me, Charles. And then again, you're coming back to the hardworking public to go in their pockets and have them bail the city out. When one of the major things you should be doing is a tax abatement should be completely abolished.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that hasn't been. And I wonder, has the city controller actually said anything, because they're the fiscal watchdog for the city of Philadelphia in reference to these numbers?
She has, yeah, she has. She's been on this program. She had been expressing concerns, and where she came on this program, I know she's been on a few others here on WRD, and she's putting out analysis of the city budget. If you go to controller.phila.gov, I mean, her analysis and her visuals on the budgets are actually more accessible than what the mayor and the city council is providing. So it's like, if you want to get some direction or some sense of exactly the state that the city budget is in, or where it's headed, or where it should go, I highly recommend going to controller.phila.gov. It's great analysis. It's a great intellectual exercise, and she's got great infographics and visuals that, for me, I like. And that's what I'm talking about. I think council and the mayor, they should be doing stuff like that, but being very simplified in the approach, and just making sure that the information is approachable, that people can, not everyone has the bandwidth or has like the capacity to read complex budget numbers, right, or complex budget data or charts or tables. Right. I get it. Not everyone has. Right. Okay, so but I think the controller, she really she keeps that in mind. That's one thing I have to say I respect about her. She keeps that in mind. That's what I'm talking about as an example. So it's not, and I've seen other examples in other places, but just using Philly, something local. It's not rocket science doing that, right? You don't have that. You don't need a PhD to do it. It's not hard work. You should have someone on staff to do it. That's what I'm talking about. So I feel comfortable, and I feel that the information is being laid out in a simple way for me when I go to controller.phila.gov. I don't feel that all the time when I go to phila.gov or when I go to phlcouncil.com. You know what I'm saying? Visually, it may be visually appealing and pleasing, but am I being directly taken to the information I need at that exact moment?
You know, Charles, and I want to say, you know, the city controller, you know, like you, Rebecca Reinhardt, and the previous controllers, which I'm familiar with, you know, you got to make things simple so the public can understand,
right.
You know, what's really going on. And as you said, well, alluded to, I guess I'm going to say, they're not making it, our elected officials aren't making it simple for the public to understand or really being as transparent as they should, in my opinion. So I think everybody should be calling their council person demanding that they don't go through with this tax increase. You know, we when we talk about the school tax, I mean the real estate tax, as we know, 55% of that real estate tax support our schools, and we're being hit tremendously, but our schools are deplorable. So somebody has to answer these questions. Why? First of all, why would you even with good conscience continue with a tax abatement program when we're the poorest big city, and in particular in the black community, our schools are deplorable. You know, we've got to stand up and we've got to approach these people and let them know that we're not going to go for this. But Charles, thank you for giving me the opportunity to express my opinion. Thank you.
All right. No, I appreciate you calling in. I appreciate that too. Gary out of Southwest. Once again, 215-634-8065. Toll free. It is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. So city officials are saying that by the end of June, they should expect to spend the remaining $65 million. So it's a remaining $65 million that hasn't been spent yet, but city officials expect that will be spent by the end of June. About $15 million. Well, let me see. Well, for 12 days, the city workforce was paid time and a half, and this is just some good reporting on the Philadelphia budget by Claudia Vargas and the at our partners at NBC 10 Philadelphia. Go to NBCPhiladelphia.com, and this really just coming out yesterday, this analysis of the city budget of the $85 million COVID-19 relief money. As of May 8th, about $20.4 million has been spent. There has been some money spent on like about $7 million on PPE, $6 million on health care, $2 million on medical supplies, about $1.2 million on COVID testing, a little over $1 million on cleaning supplies and services, technology, $870,000, something called other for nearly $850,000, transportation at about $750,000, catering is about $3. You know, people got to eat, you know, including workers or people working on this. People guys, so don't get hot on that one. You got about $389,000 and PSAs 170. That's important. $176,000 and about a little bit over $1,100 for rental equipment. Let me go to Sister Murray out of Northern Liberties, who's calling in for a reality check. Sister Murray.
Hey, how are you, my brother?
How you doing? All right.
Blessed.
Thanks so much, Sister.
Yes, I just want to touch. I'm going to hit a couple of things real fast. I know we don't have a lot of time.
Sure. No,
One
go
thing
ahead.
I want to talk about is the taxes, property taxes. Yes, I do agree with that. We all have to stand strong on that. This is not time for to raise us up when we're already starving about some property taxes. Number two, we are starving the farmers. Okay, the red states, they got billions of dollars to do their farming in Texas. You got other farmers who were actual farmers from slaves who made their way into owning land, and now they are still running their farm, can't get a dime. Their crops are falling below. I mean, come on. If you knew somebody in Texas that was running a farm, they got an extra $1 million, and then they got 10 times $1 million. What is going on? I'm about to turn on some Marvin Gaye. What's going on?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? We got to get it together. We got to pull together and look. The money that they keep saying they're spending out, you got people with small business, they do matter. They still have not gotten it. The sites a week behind. Come on. What's going on? I want the whole world. Turn on Marvin Gaye. Let's listen to what's going on. Let's get this together. Educate yourself. Educate the kids. And keep talking to them over and over again. Their life matters. Your life matters. My life matters. I didn't get my business started from yesterday. I worked hard for it. And guess what? I'm going to keep it going because I'm going to pay this radio, okay, until we get what we need.
That's right. That's right. I mean, we have to educate and we have to agitate as well. Thanks so much, Sister Murray out of Northern Liberties. Phone lines are still open at 215-634-8065. Hey, absolutely right. I mean, it's you have monies, you have resources going to constituencies that are being prioritized because of politics, right? We know that. We know what's going on. So and so we have to keep track of that. We have to keep agitating, you know, there are channels that are for that. We're gonna have to break through those channels. We're gonna have to maximize the usage of those channels to get a clear picture of what's going on, as Sister Murray was just saying. But then we got to reverse that situation. We got to figure out ways to reverse that situation or come up with alternative strategies. 215-634-8065, toll free. It is 866-361-0900. Also, we're seeing the homicide rate in Philly is still high, but what I've noticed this week is just a very slight, small reduction, at least compared to where the homicide rate was last year. So yesterday we were 18% below, or 18% higher than where we were this time last year. It's about officially 137 homicides in the city of Philadelphia, in a city of 1.6 million. Once again, I think it's important people know. Cities that are much larger, like New York, hasn't yet hit 100 homicides. LA, for nearly, I think it's about, it's definitely over about 4.1 million people, hasn't hit 100 homicides yet either during this, and especially during stay-at-home lockdown. But homicides in Philadelphia at about 137 to date in 2020, 17% above where we were this time last year. So that's still very high. But I've noticed we're not in that 20%. We were in 20% territory last week. Starting yesterday, it was 18% more than this time last year. Now it's 17%. So, but, you know, still very high, still a lot of concern there, and still a lot of conversation we need to have on how the city is reacting and responding to that as well. Let me take a quick break. We're going to take a quick break here on Reality Check Midday Tuesday. We're going to bring Lenny McAllister on, who occasionally joins us. He's one of our regulars here on Reality Check WURD. Lenny McAllister are going to talk about counties in Pennsylvania that are ignoring the governor's shutdown orders. There's about 6 counties in Pennsylvania that are ignoring or have decided to ignore the shutdown until June 4th that's happening statewide. So we're going to break that down, why they're doing that, here on Reality Check 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Word app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Seniors, if you're over the age of 60, you're at high risk for the coronavirus. This is Dr. Chris Chen, CEO of Dedicated Senior Medical Centers, with an important message. These are challenging times for all of us, but especially for you. At Dedicated, we're working hard to help our patients stay healthy, happy, and at home. We understand you need us, and that's why we offer doctor phone visits and delivery or pickup medication services. In fact, if you need to see a doctor, we'll even pick you up. Our centers remain open to see you by phone or in person now, when you need medical advice the most. Seniors, if you need a primary care doctor who is available to you now and always will be, we can help. Please call us at 800-451-7008. That's 800-451-7008. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay at home.
Want the latest in Word swag? Check out the shop tab on wordradio.com. Hoodies, tees, and more in a variety of colors. The shop tab on wordradio.com. Show the world that you're all about black. Talk Media.
Listen to Laborers Live. We created the weekend. We created the 40-hour work week. We just want enough to feed our family, be able to send our children to college, and let our next generation do better than we did.
To people that might have forgot how important unionism is in a country like the United States. People now infringing on our 8-hour workday, trying to work people more than 8 hours without overtime, trying to work people without benefits. In the long run, everybody's getting fat paycheck except the worker. So this is really a wake-up call for America.
The struggle is continuous. Tune in to Laborers Live every Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. Sponsored by LESIT, the Laborers Employers Cooperation Education Trust of the Laborers District Council of Philadelphia and vicinity.
Local 332, Sam Staten Jr. Business Manager. Local 57, Esteban Vera Business Manager. Local 135, Dan Woodall Jr. Business Manager. Local 413, James Harper Jr. Business Manager. The Laborers District Council, Ryan Boyer Business Manager, and Tony Staten, Executive Director of LESIT.
This is Wurd Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD Philadelphia. Independent Black Media. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Wurd Radio and WurdRadio.com.
All right, welcome back to Reality Check, Tuesday midday edition here. I'm Charles Ellison. You can reach me on Twitter.com, at Ellison Report. Also, I know a lot of people had questions on what the city of Philadelphia is doing or has been doing with this $85 million emergency appropriation. So I am going to tweet that right now with the graphics and the breakdowns and a direct link to an article that just came out yesterday about that. Go to at Ellison Report on Twitter.com. You can see that right there, or hashtag City Council Live. Just making that information available, and so for people to see, and because it seems like we're getting a few calls where people are wondering, okay, what is the city doing with its money? So the city's going to have to kind of step up a little bit and be a bit more deliberate and a bit more transparent in how it's spending those funds, where those funds are going, who's receiving those funds, et cetera. So definitely appreciate Claudia Vargas putting that analysis together at our partners. At our partner website, we're NBC10. Go to NBC10Philadelphia.com. NBCPhiladelphia.com for more there. I think the title of the piece, well, I'd link to it at Twitter.com, at Ellison Report on Twitter.com. Philly officials slow to spend $85 million reserved for COVID-19 relief. So that's just a piece that you should spend a few moments to check out, but I linked to it. Go to Twitter.com, at Ellison Report, hashtag City Council Live for that one. Joining us now is Lenny McAllister. Lenny McAllister with the Commonwealth Foundation, also strategist, former congressional candidate. He's out there on the western side of the state, Pittsburgh-based, hailing from Pitttown, and go to CommonwealthFoundation.org, I think, for more information, at Liberty for PA. Lenny joins us by phone. Lenny, how are you doing? How's the family too, man?
Charles, how's your family? We're doing well. How's your family?
Okay, good. All right, good. Everyone's well. Everyone's busy, but everyone's well so far. So we're just, staying safe. Staying shut down for now. So, but let's talk about, speaking of shutdowns, let's talk about this situation, and you've been analyzing this, been writing about it, this situation in Pennsylvania being a big state. Obviously, there are a lot of political tensions there, especially between Governor Wolf and many conservatives, Republicans in the state, and specific counties. There are about 6 counties that are planning to defy or are already rolling out shutdown defiance measures. They're going to reopen their counties quickly. Who are those counties, and why are they doing that?
Well, you have several in the central part of the state, including Cumberland County, Scottsdale County. You also have some in the western part of the state, including Greene County, which borders West Virginia, south of Pittsburgh by about 45 minutes to an hour. Beaver County is also looking to do the same as well. What you're finding is that they're frustrated, not just economically, but with the approach, which has gone back and forth with the Wolf administration. It started out as being, we're going to roll this out by regions, Then you had counties that pushed back that said, okay, well, you're including us in with Philadelphia, which has been the epicenter of Pennsylvania, or you're including us in with Pittsburgh, and we're an hour away. And we only have, at the time, 10 cases, 12 cases, none of them fatal. Then it became, okay, we'll roll it out by counties, but then as you've seen the Wolf administration in May start rolling out this red to yellow status, it's still almost been exclusively by regions. And so people are pushing back and saying, okay, which one is it, number one? Number two, is it being driven by the data? Because you have counties where there's a low amount of deaths, and a lot of those deaths and cases have been centralized within certain specific nursing homes. But then they're also looking at the trade-off to that and saying, okay, this doesn't seem to be driven by what we have. Even here in Allegheny County, you have a situation where our numbers have continued to go downward, but when we came to the May 8th deadline, we were told that, well, population density is going to determine that you all stay in the red status. But that was not a criteria that was thrown out there until literally May 8th. And those are the things that are frustrating a lot of these county leaders with what the Wolf administration's been doing going through April and into May.
Well, maybe the number of cases, the number of deaths aren't that high for many of these counties because of the shutdown measures. Is that something that people want to test out? They want to find out, experiment with by reopening, and then suddenly then they will start seeing a spike in infection rates and deaths.
I think part of what they're looking at is if the numbers continue to bear out, which is over 65% of all Pennsylvania deaths have been in nursing homes. Yeah. And they're looking at a lot of these small cities and counties. Again, you start talking about Greene County, there are just a bunch of small towns down there, even Washington County, which again is south of Pittsburgh. Aside from the city of Washington, you have a lot of small counties that are looking at these mom and pop businesses that are sustaining not just local jobs, but also they're the grocery store. There's a Giant Eagle and these two local mom and pop stores that provide groceries for the town. And if those two are shut down, and Giant Eagle is putting, and that's basically the equivalent of Acme or Giant in the East, and they're putting social distancing measures into place where only 250 people can go into a store, you're now cutting off essential services as well. And these are businesses that are saying, we can do the same thing that the box stores are doing, and we can still get ourselves back to work, keep people safe, but also make sure that we keep our businesses alive.
Yeah, I understand that. I actually understand that. I mean, there should be some there should be some balance, some equity in terms of like how the different stores or different establishments or different types of like food distribution or grocery stores are treated. But I'm just trying to understand the rationale between defying the shutdown. It's a standard universal public health guidance to contain, to reduce infections and deaths. So like, why make that point by defying the shutdown? I mean, why not just make the point, hey, listen, we want you to be more transparent. We want more diligent oversight of this. We want to make sure you're being fair here while we're maintaining universal public health prophylaxis that everyone's agreed to. We just want to make sure that you're being equitable in what businesses you're shutting down. Hey, make sure on a practical level, the mom and pop stores that sell food, keep those open. I mean, I don't understand why you have to defy the shutdown, why you have to open up. Why not just stick with the rest of the state, stick with the June 4th order, stick with the public health guidance?
Well, the reason why is because as these businesses have basically taken that position, Charles, the Wolf administration has said, okay, and no, we're not going to be transparent. We're not going to tell you our rationale. We're not going to include you in the process so that you can be compliant, so that you can open up. You continue to do what we say, and we'll let you know when you can open back up. And what you're finding from these counties and from these business leaders within these counties is that, okay, we can't wait until June. We will literally not have communities anymore, in communities, particularly in western Pennsylvania and throughout the central part of the state as well, that were already dying because of what transpired 10 years ago, because of the population shift over the last 40 years. This is one of the very worst things that they can go through economically. That's been a lot of the pushback. There hasn't been transparency from the Wolf administration. Governor Wolf has vetoed multiple bills basically saying, can we at least follow the federal guidelines that New York, New Jersey, Maryland, and Ohio were following in regards to keeping their businesses open? He said no. Can we at least get some more consistency on what the criteria needs to be in order for these businesses to meet the standards. He said no. You got to remember, with the initial business shutdown, businesses were given hours, not days, hours to respond to that, and then they were immediately shut down. There was no transparency. There was no feed into the process that allowed businesses or even business leaders to say, okay, if we can keep Giant Eagle and Target and Acme and Walmart open, can we keep similar businesses like that open in these local communities? That's yet to transpire.
I agree with that.
And you're seeing people push back as a result of that because they're scared that we've built this up for 70 years. It's going to go away. And what do I do next? I'm 56, 57 years old. I've been working at my family's business since I was 14 years old. And I've been living in rural Washington County or, parts of Cumberland County or parts of the northeast part of the state my whole life. And now if this business goes, what do I do from here? And when you're not getting transparency from the governor and you're getting moving goalposts, you get mounting frustration.
Yeah. So I agree with that. I agree with that. I mean, why can't the mom and pop store that distributes food, drink, whatever, those essentials, those essential supplies, why can't they stay open like a Walmart or a Target or other big box store can stay open? I'm just having trouble sort of wrapping my head around, okay, well, if a county is deciding to defy universal public health guidance by reopening, okay, well, do they have their safety measures in place to ensure that there won't be an increase in infections and deaths once they do that? So are they confident that they've got testing, contact tracing in place to ensure that they contain any outbreaks within their county, right? Are they making sure, are they providing guidance through their regulatory agencies, their local licensing and inspection agencies to ensure that, okay, well, hey, if you're a mom and pop business, that's great, reopen so you don't have to suffer too much more so you can enjoy the same, revenue streams as the big box stores are enjoying. That's fine, but are you safely reopening your business? Are you following basic public health guidance, disinfecting, wiping down, masks and gloves are worn at all times? Are you protecting your workers? See, that's where I'm concerned. I'm like, okay, I agree with you on the transparency part, and I think the governor's got to do a lot more work there as well. I totally agree with that, and all things need to be equal in that. But let's make sure here, though, like, okay, if you're going to reopen, you guys are pushing to reopen so much, you must be confident that cases won't erupt. You must be confident that you're going to keep everyone in your county safe.
And I think that they are, and I'll tell you why. Let's go back to, again, that same mom and pop store that makes sure that people in the town can get their bread and their lunch meats, etc. You're 63 years old, you're 40 pounds overweight, and you have high blood pressure, but you've been working at this store since you were roughly 12 years old, and it was your grandfather's store initially. You're in the vulnerable population. If there's anybody that's going to reopen the store and throw on a mask and throw on some gloves and try to follow some of the social distancing measures that Giant Eagle has been following just, a mile away, it's going to be that mom and pop store, because that sole proprietor, if that sole proprietor gets sick, it's just the same as having a shelter-at-home place in order. It's the same thing with what you're finding with some of the barbershops, where you're hearing about barbershops wanting to open up. There was one actually in the central part of the state that opened up this week, but it doesn't mean that they're not taking social distancing precautions into place. It doesn't mean that their shops are jam-packed.
But Lenny, who's enforcing that, though? Is the county governments, are they enforcing that? Are they making sure? Because, it may be that's the assumption that everyone's being safe, but I don't want to go by assumptions. I want to go by, like, what's the governing standard? What's the best practices according to that regulatory? What's the regulatory best practice? Do those counties have the capacity to check in on those businesses and make sure they're following those guidelines?
I think, well, number one, yes. I mean, you got to remember, we still have federal guidelines that have been set out this whole time. So it's not as though people are just jumping into it and saying we're going to experiment with what's there. In fact, SB 613, one of the bills that was vetoed by Governor Wolf, basically asked Pennsylvania businesses to follow the same guidelines that New York and New Jersey and other surrounding states have been following when it comes to businesses doing just that. So that's number one. Number two, I think we have to continue to remember that it's in the best interest of every leader within these counties that are pushing back to ensure that their residents are safe. It's in the best interest of every business to ensure that their consumers are safe. Because if all you need is one outbreak at one store, from even a free market perspective, what's going to transpire? If there's 2 mom-and-pop stores and you hear about COVID-19 hitting one where there was 3 cases that broke out within a 5-day period of time, you're not going to shop A. You're going to go to shop B. So even with these things in place between county government, between the CDC guidelines and the other federal guidelines that are still out there, and watching what other businesses have done, not just during what we've seen in the Commonwealth, but in the surrounding states as well, I think that these counties are confident that they can do it safely, and I think that needs to be the emphasis. Nobody wants to jump back into the pool, per se, literally and figuratively in this instance. They're looking to do it in a safe fashion that can get more of the Pennsylvania economy back on track.
But okay, so you said no one wants to jump back into the pool, but apparently folks that keep showing up at these state capitals, Harrisburg included, they want to jump back in the pool. So, I mean, how are we confident that everyone's on the same page about that? Because we're still seeing people, I mean, they're like bioterrorists. I mean, they're like COVID-19 hotspots. They keep showing up at the state capitals, gathered in crowds, and they keep reinfecting themselves. Some folks are asymptomatic. We're seeing cases of that pop up. We're seeing people, I mean, you're talking about the central and western part of the state. You know, people are highly conservative. People have been pushing politically for reopening at the risk of reinfecting or infecting themselves or passing it on to other people. So, I mean, these are, you know, I'm assuming based on, I'd love to unpack the political dimensions of this. How can we be certain that business owners who are living in highly conservative, Trump-like counties are going to follow basic public health prophylaxis? Doesn't seem like a lot of folks in those parts of the state are doing that. You know, they're busy trying to reopen and crowd up with loaded automatic rifles, trying to force the governor's hand on stuff like this.
Well, some of that, let's unpack that and talk about the 2 different aspects that you have there. Number one, when you start talking about governing, you have to do the best good for the most amount of people. Some of the folks that are showing up at these state capitals, whether it's Harrisburg or out in Michigan and other places, these are people that are living more towards the fringe. These are people that are trying to intimidate their way into getting what they want. And I would say that they're doing it in a way that I would not approve of. And you and I both know that if you start changing the technicolor on some of the people that are in the picture, that the approach would be quite different. So let's keep that where that is. But let's move back to the majority of the individuals that are trying to do what needs to be done. They want to do it in a safe fashion. They want to do it so that they can get their way of life as much as possible back. Everybody knows that things have changed. I don't think that people are doing this from a purely political perspective. They're looking at the numbers. They're looking at the fact that while we're dealing with this, Charles, the unemployment system in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is something that the Auditor General was noted should have been fixed more than 2 years ago. So you still have people that haven't gotten paid since the governor basically shut down their employment. I can tell you that my future son-in-law is one of those individuals. Had a steady job for several years. His job was furloughed and taken away, and he hasn't received a dime yet. Now, that he's betrothed to my daughter. That is something that's very personal to me. So how can the governor continue to say there's no transparency, we're going to keep you shut down? And this is a guy, by the way, my future son-in-law is an IT professional. But because of the economic impact, his job was furloughed. You have plenty of people like that they're not necessarily in the service industry where they have to interact with the public like that, but because of the long-ranging economic impact that you're seeing, these are the type of stories you're seeing all across the Commonwealth. And so if you can't pay people, they can't get their benefits, you won't give them answers, you keep moving the goalposts, people are going to say, how can we open back up safely, responsibly, but allow the economy to get back on track? I do not think the vast majority of Pennsylvanians want to do this by way of carrying around a semi-automatic weapon and marching in front of the Capitol. I think they're looking at this and saying, we can do this smartly, safely, and efficiently.
You know, I'm curious too. I mean, we have to be honest, however, Lenny, about the political aspects of this and the political composition of these counties. I mean, these are all, we assume, Republican counties. I mean, I wonder what this would be like if Governor Wolf were Republican, right? I mean, would they be this defiant of a shutdown order if it was a if he was Republican, he'd be like a lot of Republicans. And it's so sad that everyone can't be on the same page. We can't all collectively just agree to a universal public health guidance that keeps everyone safe and intact while this thing is sorted out until we get to the vaccine point. But I just wonder. I wonder if these were Republican counties responding to a Republican governor.
Well, number one, I mean, there's three different aspects of that. Number one, when Governor Wolf didn't put Allegheny County on the list for May 8th, one of the most powerful Democrats in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Rich Fitzgerald, who's the county executive of Allegheny County, pushed back hard in the media, on television, and said, well, our numbers are right, and this is supposed to be driven by the data. I don't understand why Allegheny County is not opening up with Erie on May 8th. I'm very disappointed by that, and I'd like to see the governor reconsider. Lo and behold, Allegheny County is on the list just a day later to reopen up on Friday. That's number one. In regards to your hypothetical situation, if this was a Republican governor in Pennsylvania with this, will we see Republican counties pushing back? Let me take you back to the gas tax that Tom Corbett passed during his one-term administration. How did Republicans take to that, number one, and how did they vote as a result of that in 2014? They did not stand with Governor Corbett. They were furious about the gas tax. It cost several incumbents in the House and the Senate their seats, and it cost Governor Corbett his reelection campaign. So I think in some instances when you have this lack of going against the grain, that it's going to be problematic. Now, the third aspect of that, you start talking about the politics and how this is playing out. You have to look at this from both sides too, Charles. You know, Governor Wolf has been very, very against working with Republican elected officials in Harrisburg as well. This is something that he is guiding basically with his Department of Education head, his health director head, and in some instances, the Attorney General, who everybody knows is considering a run in 2022 to be governor. So if you're only making decisions in a black box with no transparency, when you have 203 people in the House of Representatives, another 50 people in the state Senate, and you're only making decisions by way of basically 4 people impacting millions in the 5th largest or 6th largest populated state in the United States, you're going to get pushback. There's way too much diversity to just think that everybody's going to get on board with a lack of transparency for 2 months. Because, by the way, people forget. People initially tried to be on board with it and gave him the benefit of the doubt. There's a reason why his poll numbers were so high going out of March into April. There's also a reason why those poll numbers are going down through April and into May. Lack of transparency, moving goalposts, and not being able to help the people of Pennsylvania with whether it's unemployment or essential needs, more than just you can go to John Eagle or Acme, essential needs and lack of answers. All that
I just wish there was a way.
Right now.
I wish there was a way to highlight that, to push for that transparency without, in those counties, a wholesale defiance of the shutdown order. I mean, why not just open up the businesses that you as a county deem are essential and should stay open while still following the shutdown order through June 4th? That's what I just, I feel like there's just sort of universal agreement that, okay, well, we have to kind of stay in this state or in this mode as a public health precaution. So we're going to do that. As counties, we're going to continue to do that. But in the meantime, we are going to defy you, Governor, on these specific elements, which is the mom and pop stores, for example, or other businesses that in our county we deem are essential. But we got you, Governor. We agree, like everyone else, we're going to still maintain that shutdown state until June 4th.
I think number one, you got to understand that some of the states already been reopened. Some of the states, like, for example, Erie, 2 hours away from us here in Pittsburgh, has been reopened since May 8th. Charles, I think that the answer to that question is that the General Assembly, which is basically the voice of the people by way of consent, tried to do that with Governor Wolf. They did pass SB 613. They have been passing other pieces of legislation across the governor's desk from mid-March all the way through to now, impacting everything from education to the economy. And this governor said no. This governor said, I'm trying to be transparent, and then vetoed a bill that was passed unanimously asking for the governor to start opening up the open records law once again. So when you see these type of things, you can't say I want to be more transparent and veto a unanimously passed bill. You can't say I want to be more transparent and be more welcoming to the Pennsylvania economy in the midst of this and say, however, we're going to be harder on our businesses than the state of New York, where the epicenter of COVID-19 is in the United States. There's an inconsistency there, whether it's of logic, of politics, or of good public policy.
But see, and see, the thing with, like, to my understanding with Erie, because you mentioned Erie County, right? Erie County, PA, they just reported yesterday 120 new positive cases of, and so they just like you said, they just reopened or relaxed, shut down on Friday. Look, they've already got an increase of about 120 cases. So they, that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, there's got to be a way to do this, like, in a responsible way. You get the transparency, but we maintain the public health at the same time as well.
Erie's an interesting example too. You talk about it. Are we looking at pushback based on Republican or Democrat? The county executive of Erie County is a lady by the name of Kathy Dahlkemper, former U.S. Congresswoman.
Right.
She was caught breaking the shelter in place. I don't know if you're aware of the story, Audis, but she was caught breaking the shelter in place, not just by leaving her home when it was a strict shelter in place for the whole Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. She literally drove to the state of New York to go to a family cottage with her sister, her daughter, her son-in-law, and her grandkids, and played cards. And then, of course, the story became she supposedly played cards through a window and waved and this and the other. But here you have a politician saying, well, everybody else needs to stay at home, only leave your house if you're taking care of somebody else or if you're going to get essential needs. And she goes to a second home in another state. Now, granted, Erie and New York are fairly close, but my point is it would be the equivalent of me driving to Steubenville or be the equivalent of me driving to Morgantown just to go, visit with a family member. When you're seeing people pick and choose what they want to follow, and this was a story that came out 3 or 4 weeks ago. When you're seeing that transpire, again, lack of transparency, and you're seeing other states do this differently, including states that have been hard hit like New Jersey and New York. We shut down construction. Neither one of those states did at all. When you're starting to see these things, I mean, Governor DeWine in Ohio, if you recall, was one of the harshest governors when this started out in February going into March. He shut down the NCAA sites before they shut down the whole tournament. They're opening up in a different way than Pennsylvania is. When you take all these things into consideration, there was a window where Governor Wolf, through good faith, could have worked with select Republicans in leadership, coupled with the advisors he trusted, and still guided this process along. Instead, now you have a fractured movement where you have different counties doing different things. And unfortunately, Charles, that's a reflection of leadership just as much as it is a reflection of the diverse economy we have, the divided political times we have, and the like.
Lenny McAllister with the Commonwealth Foundation. Go to commonwealthfoundation.org for more there. At Lenny McAllister, by the way, former congressional candidate as well. He's based out there in Pittsburgh, joining us here on Reality Check, as he frequently does, particularly on Pressing Matters National, our roundtable, as regular contributor on this program. Lenny, always appreciate you, man. Thanks for the exchange. Thanks for the conversation. So we'll be talking with you again. I'm sure you're going to be watching this closely. We will do the same.
Love you, Charles. God bless you all out there in Philadelphia. Stay safe.
All right. Much love to you and yours, Lenny, to your family as well. Stay safe out there. Thank you. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back on the other side, we'll be talking with Michael O'Brien, Youth Program Director at the Village of Arts and Humanities. We're going to talk about youth incarceration, juvenile detention centers, and youth prisons in pandemic. Want to discuss that, unpack that in our next segment here on Reality Check Midday Tuesday, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, WurdRadio.com, Wurd TV, Wurd app. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
He's back.
This is Reverend Al Sharpton.
Keeping it real with the Reverend Al Sharpton.
In times like these, we have to stay connected.
At a brand new time, Monday through Thursday, 9 p.m. till midnight.
I'm excited that Keeping It Real returns to WURD.
Keeping it real with the Reverend Al Sharpton. Monday through Thursday, 9 p.m. till midnight.
Keep it locked to WURD 96.1 FM, 900 AM. WURDradio.com.
Temple University's School of Pharmacy is making hand sanitizer to support local hospitals and doctors' offices. We are looking for donations of spray bottles to store our upcoming batches. If you have any you would like to donate, please bring or mail them to Temple University School of Pharmacy, care of Dr. David Lee Bowe, 3307 North Broad Street, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 19140. Visit temple.edu to learn more about how Temple University is helping Philadelphia during COVID-19.
This is Wurd Radio, independent black media.
Always Best Care is a great place to work. Flexibility,
leadership, purpose,
great benefits.
There's never a dull moment.
Diversity, inclusion, compasión.
We love our jobs. If you're looking for a great place to work, you can join our compassionate Team Green. You can apply online at teamgreenabc.com or call 267-909-9248.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Wurd Radio and WurdRadio.com.
All right, Michael O'Brien is Youth Program Director at the Village of Arts and Humanities Philly base. To go to villagearts.org for more information. He joins us by phone here on Reality Check Midday Tuesday. Michael, how are you doing, sir? Keeping safe?
I'm well and keeping safe. How are you? Thank you for having me on, too.
Good to talk with you again. Always good to have you on. So you've been paying close attention to the situation inside many juvenile detention centers and youth prisons. There was some news, some very disturbing news of an incident at a youth facility in New York City. We're seeing scattered reports of issues, obviously issues and concerns, alarms about COVID-19 spreading through jails and prisons anyway. So that concern is even more heightened when you talk about young people, people who are not adults being confined to these incarceration centers and having to deal with pandemics. So talk about how widespread this problem is. What are some of your concerns?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest issues is that we don't actually know 100% how widespread this is. And it's reflective of the larger issue of, like, we just have a testing problem in our country at large. I think it's something where, like, barely 5% of the whole population's even been tested, right? So we don't even know really who's been exposed, who hasn't. And when you're dealing with people who are forced to be in tight quarters with each other, you have to start doing things that are already, a part of that system. They're already a little inhumane, like solitary confinement for long periods of time, but particularly with young people, it becomes even more inhumane. And the bits of testing that are happening, the numbers are coming back in ways that are staggering, right? So it's something where staff in 26 different states at different youth facilities have tested positive. Incarcerated youth in 13 states in D.C. have tested positive. But again, with the shortage of testing, like, we still don't really know how widespread this is. And so that is the concern with testing, right, is that we know clearly from the preliminary stuff that's coming back, it's a problem.
Yeah, that becomes a problem. What do we know as far as Philadelphia? I haven't kept track of that situation. The juvenile, as they call it, the Juvenile Justice Center. I think that's on 48th Street in Philly. What do we know about that? I know that there was a call to release. They had about 150 young people in that center. Were they released, or what's the situation with them right now? And do we have any sense of whether or not there are infections that are happening, or asymptomatic or even symptomatic carriers within that center?
So here's what I do know about JJSC. There are over 100 young people still there. There has been some success with getting youth out of JJSC and some success with getting youth also home from placements in general, right? Our justice system is a little more complex than just like one spot where young people end up. So there has been some success, but it's not, again, we still have lots of young people both in placement and still at the JJSC. I think, again, the hard part is testing when we don't know and people have to work on precautions. We end up doing things, again, like putting young people in solitary confinement for long periods of time, right? We're quarantining them for long periods of time where in their stage of development, that's just so not appropriate. So not appropriate to the point where the American Academy of Pediatrics about 6 days ago released a national public policy paper with recommendations for what communities and cities and states, et cetera, need to be doing in ways that the medical community could step up its own advocacy in this context. And they're, I mean, as you can imagine, they're calling it out, going, this is completely not okay. In fact, what they're calling for is that community-based solutions and diversion tactics be employed heavily right now, so that incarcerating someone is absolutely the last resort and should actually be a thought of, like, what's it like to think about it as a non-resort, right? As opposed to it being the go-to option and in cases where it might not be necessary at all, right?
Right. The other thing, too, I mean, we see, like, I know that the Sentencing Project, they just put out some data yesterday on this as far as COVID-19 infection rates within juvenile facilities. From their count, we have about 280 known cases of COVID-19 in juvenile detention facilities, 280 young people who are inmates in these centers have contracted COVID-19, 440 staff. So it's not just a threat to young people who are in these centers, it's also a threat to staff. You got higher rates of staff who have been infected in juvenile detention facilities than actual youth inmates as well. So, and I don't know what the count is as far as Pennsylvania, but there are numbers of both youth and staff who have contracted COVID-19. Do we know, you mentioned testing, we don't know. We need the testing, we need that contact tracing to understand, like, how severe this is within these facilities, Michael. But what are some other best practices while people are still there? What are some other best practices that we can go by in terms of disinfecting, in terms of keeping these places as safe as possible while criminal justice or detention center administrators insist on keeping people in there? Okay, well, what do you do to stop the spread of infection or to mitigate it?
Yeah, right before I answer that, I do want to speak to the point you made around the 440 staffers, right, who are also testing positive. I think one of the things we've got to highlight is the larger public health concern where these folks are going back to their families and their communities, and they are potentially exposing even more people and more folks who are already at risk, particularly, and I appreciate having this conversation in the context of us being Black and brown folks, and we're highlighting issues really relevant to the Black community. Those folks going back into their community and being around folks who are already at hyper risk for the impact of this disease, like, we have to talk about this. This is not just, to your point, a juvenile justice issue, quote unquote. This is a humanity issue and about Black well-being and our posterity. So we have to think about it in that full circle. So I appreciate you bringing that up. I think there are two, and to your question, I think there are 2 points that we've got to consider here. One is that inside a prison, there's no way to actually practice social distancing in a safe way. It's not like, that's such a false concept. Like, we can try and make attempts, but it's still going to pale in comparison to what's legitimately necessary to create safety. So I am going to answer part of your question, but I do want to put that out there that, like, some of this is us existing in a bit of, like, a falsehood or farce and trying to make the best out of something that just kind of can't happen well. It's like, ooh, do I want to build my house on sand, or do I want to build my house in a marsh? And it's kind of like, well, I don't want to build my house in either of those places. And it's like, well, you don't have that option. And then we're trying to figure out, like, what's the best next thing. And so, yeah, I mean, people can practice healthy sanitation. We can Lysol everything down. Again, the problem becomes that people have to be able to practice distancing. I mean, it's not a panacea, but I think one of the things that we have seen and heard over and over and over again is that given that there is no vaccine, given that we're learning all these other biological ways that we might be able to, either stop the spread or cut off, how long this virus is living and attacking the body. There's research around vitamin C taking place right now in huge dosages, all the way down to the antibodies thing and then the plasma. Like, we're legitimately figuring this out as it's happening. And so social distancing does become this like tried and true way that we know we can help keep people safe. And there are a lot of people, staff and these young people, who are forced to not practice that. And we have to, and again, this is where the American Academy of Pediatrics stepped in and said, listen, literally quoting them, under normal conditions, young people who are incarcerated are exposed to like really unsanitary environments, and this is making it even worse. So we've got to think forward in a way that says, you know, what happens when we don't pathologize our young people so much and think about them as these hyper threats to be incarcerated, and what's it like to make an investment in their health and in their future at a time where that same investment is going to help those staffers who are working with them, and by default help the rest of us as a society, physically, but also in terms of our future.
Yeah. You know, one other thing, too, when we talk, well, I got you for a couple more minutes, Michael, if you've been tuning in, we've been talking with Michael O'Brien, Youth Program Director at the Village of Arts and Humanities. Go to villagearts.org for more there. One other thing that strikes me about this conversation, too, Michael, is how typically when we talk about young people and COVID-19, we keep focusing in on, or at least the national discussion, the public discourse keeps focusing in on how young people are less likely to get sick from it, right, or less likely to die from it than adults. So we typically just think about the young people as carriers. And so do you feel that that's one of the reasons why we're not spotlighting this issue as much? I mean, we really haven't until recently thought about, okay, we have been talking about prisons and jails, incarceration facilities, but primarily in terms of adults. We haven't been thinking about juvenile or youth prisons, juvenile detention centers, and it's part of the problem because we just have been minimizing the impact, or just assuming that the impact on young people is nominal, the impact of COVID-19.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think there are a couple of things like colliding at the same time in that space. One, you're right. There's the narrative around the young people is that they're more asymptomatic or they're not as sick, et cetera. But then there's another narrative or some data points around the risk that Black people are, at in terms of exposure to this disease and its impact because of historic violence, at the systems level, right? We've seen public health take this national stage in conversations where it normally wouldn't, and we have people talking both population health and public health in simpler ways than they normally have. And so all of a sudden now more Black people have heard terms like the social determinants of health, right? Or more folks are exposed, Black and, non-Black folks are exposed to this idea around, income, your neighborhood, your access to nutritious foods, all of these things colliding to undergird your body's general physiological health. We're also talking about, exposure to trauma and adversity and the ways that the body adapts over time physiologically and disease risk from adapting to chronic stress from trauma and adversity over the lifespan, particularly in these young ages for the young folks we're talking about who are unfortunately incarcerated right now. So, we have all these factors colliding, and I think what's happening, one is that it's a lot of information, and I think it's just easier to disconnect. In fact, research shows when there's information overload, it's just easy to disconnect from it. Your brain kind of looks at it and goes, I can't make sense of all of that, and it just backs up from it, and it starts to find the simplest thing to make sense of the world, and then it's going to sit in that because your brain technically doesn't want to work that hard as an organ. And I think that's what we're seeing happen in mass. And so rather than digging into the nuances, I think people are scared and frightened and they back up. And I think the other thing is, again, Black people have had to deal with historic disenfranchisement, though we've had, monumental achievements and successes as a group and with individuals within the group. We still exist in a series of systems within systems that do not put our well-being and posterity first. And when having to make sense of that, it can be very disorienting in the context of the fear and threat of imminent death. And so I just think at large people don't know how to make sense of this and don't know what to do. But there are to round this point out, there are groups of like black scientists, black doctors, black epidemiologists who are coming together to figure this out and talk about it and connect with communities and break this stuff down and get them involved, or at least get them information, equitable access to info, and info that matters to them and their livelihood and their families and their neighborhoods. And so the village is involved with that work with some folks from Drexel. We're working with the public health department. We're actually working with the public health department and hiring young people to be a part of teams doing this and using media and narrative to go out into the world and like educate people on the stuff, but also to put pressure on the spaces of power, political and just, even outside of the space of politics, where there's power to do something about these issues and to do something about youth incarceration right now, and also like what happens when young people are transitioning back home. Getting people easy access points to the info and to participating in advocacy is like a huge concern for all of us.
We've been talking with Michael O'Brien. Michael O'Brien, Youth Program Director at the Village of Arts and Humanities. Go to thevillagearts.org for more information there, see what he's up to, what they're working on, some wonderful work that they're doing at the Village. So it's always good to talk with them and talk with Michael especially. Good to have you on, Michael. So we'll be talking with you again, I'm sure, so and keeping track of this issue and others as well. So I feel like there's room for a future discussion. This is another segment on, how the arts are faring in a time like this in COVID-19. So maybe we'll do another discussion. We'll put that together real soon. But it's always good to talk with you.
Happy to do that. Could I actually make a quick plug?
Sure, go ahead.
Thanks. On May 18th, there is a direct action happening outside of the Juvenile Justice Study Center with a number of different groups: Media Mobilizing Project, Incarcerate PA, the Village of Arts and Humanities. I'm moving fast, so I'm leaving some folks out, but it's from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m., and we're calling attention to these issues. Please come out if you can. Share the info. If you go to villagearts.org, we have some info up. If you check out our Facebook page, we've got some info up. Please feel free to share that out, but we are trying to keep the attention on this issue and keep it moving forward, both at the local level, but also at the state level with some demands to the governor. Thank you for letting me plug that.
All right, excellent. No, I appreciate that. So we'll definitely go to villagearts.org for more information on that. All right, thanks so much, Michael. You be safe,
no problem. Take care.
All right,
bye-bye.
Take care. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back on the other side, phone lines are open at 215-634-8065, 866-361-0900. Digital lines are open as well. Hit us at twitter.com, at Ellison Report on twitter.com, and also facebook.com/forward. Let's take a break and we'll be right back.
Get your money straight. Get my money right. It's Solomon Jones and Akbar Hassan. Fridays on Wake Up with Wurd. 7 a.m. till 10 a.m. Hosted by Solomon Jones. Exclusively on Wurd Radio. 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Streaming live on WurdRadio.com and on the Wurd Radio app.
Pico has many ways to help you lower your energy usage and save money at home. Here's one. If your heating and cooling system is more than 20 years old, it may be time for your contractor to replace it with a high-efficiency Energy Star certified model. You'll get a rebate from Pico and save on your monthly electric bill. You'll find a list of new heating and cooling system rebates at pico.com/rebates. Or you can call 1-888-5-PICO-SAVE for all the details. Plus, find instant discounts on smart thermostats and more at pico.com/marketplace. There's free shipping on orders over $49.
Pennsylvania was forged for the common good. Hard work, calloused hands, big thinking. Every Pennsylvanian is a bit different, but in this way we're all the same. We are not afraid of a challenge. The coronavirus is just another moment where we must come together to protect our home. The fuller we embrace social distancing, the fewer Pennsylvanians will be lost. Stay home to stay safe. Stay home to protect Pennsylvania.
Paid for with Pennsylvania taxpayer dollars.
Support independent black media and join the Forward movement now at 215-425-7875 or visit wordradio.com. Reality Check with Charles Ellison right now on Wurd Radio and wordradio.com.
All right, we're back at it here on Reality Check Midday Tuesday edition, and we'll be wrapping soon and heading into The Source, which happens at about 1 p.m., so keep your WURD radio dial locked in. to the home of Black Talk Media. Go to twitter.com. We're at Ellison Report. Also, leave your comments and questions at the live stream, the Facebook live stream at facebook.com/forward 215-634-8065. Toll free, it is 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Virginia Honfo, thanks so much. Thanks for asking about my sister as well. She's doing well. The new baby is doing well. It's very handsome. Little dude, my new nephew, and thanks for that. So everything turned out okay. Yeah, I was keeping a very close eye on that. Obviously, with all the physical distancing taking place, couldn't be there in person. I would have definitely been there in person, but just have to be, had to take caution. But everyone's doing well. I appreciate you asking. So I got a new nephew. Was born on Thursday, so I was real excited about that. Can't wait to see him too. So and I really appreciate folks. A few folks have been asking, and everything. She's healthy. My little sister's doing good. Her fiance is, he's no longer all jittery and nervous. So, so they're just now, they got a little baby boy at home. So we're real pleased about that. Thank you for that. Continue to call us 215-634-8065, toll free 866-361-0900 here on Reality Check. Let me go to Earl in Atlantic City, who's calling in for a Reality Check. Earl, what's good?
Hey, good afternoon, my brother.
Hey, good afternoon. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for everything you guys are doing over there. Keep up the great work.
Thank you. Yeah, we appreciate that.
There you go. I want to circle back on your discussion earlier about the money that was unspent by the city of Philadelphia so far.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at the same article this morning that you were talking about, and
right.
they were listing the expenditures. And I know I donated to the Black Doctors Consortium to help them with their testing in the Black community,
mm-hmm.
and how they are working with the churches in that regard.
Yeah.
And I've been speaking to people that live in the communities, asking them, are there testing sites in your community other than the work that the Black doctors have been doing? Like, has anybody seen anything?
Mm-hmm.
And, there's just not a lot of chatter about where you can go to get tested in your community.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a bit taken aback when I saw the article this morning about, if the Black doctors are raising money on their own for testing.
Right.
I saw the line item for testing in that article, and I'm questioning the fact that why, are there so few testing sites in the city if there appears to be money left to provide that service? So that's
mm-hmm.
just a red flag that I noticed. And when I looked at the money spent on the public service campaign to get the advertising out about the staying home, I heard, I understand the PSAs are very important.
Mm-hmm.
But I just would like to hear from a council person, when you're able to get one on,
mm-hmm.
To just have a little discussion about the needs of the community and why there are so few testing sites in our community when there appears to be money available.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, right now we got about 32. There are 32 locations throughout the city. This according, like the latest counter tally. BillyPenn.com is a good source for that. Billy Penn, they've been keeping an ongoing tally of testing sites, but 32 far few, right? So 32 far few. We need more. We need more contact tracing and testing apparatus. And yeah, I wonder about that too. I thought about that. I did want to mention that. Thanks for you beat me to the punch. And I'm happy you did, Earl, on questioning like as far as like the amount of money that's going into testing. About over $1.2 million that the city has spent on testing. Once again, 3/4 of the money hasn't been spent. We hear a lot of conversation. There's so much work that the Black Doctors Consortium is doing in terms of testing or providing testing. And even you have like federal officials. You have even like we had Congressman Evans on, what was it, last week? He's trying to find federal money for the Black Doctors Consortium. So, is any of that money, can any of that money go, right, Earl? I mean,
yeah.
Well, did you give any money to the Black Doctors Consortium? Because they're getting headlines. Everyone knows about them to the point where even people in D.C. know about them. I wonder about that. It's not clear to me if the Black Doctors Consortium received city money for the testing. I don't know.
Well, they quoted them in an article last week also, saying that because they've been being interviewed like all over national. It's a national story.
Right.
And in their response in one of the interviews that they had, they mentioned that they've reached out to multiple sources within the government on different levels.
Right.
And up to this point, they had not received the funding they had requested. That's why they took the initiative to do it on their own and ask for the public to donate to provide testing within their own communities.
Now,
so it's just a red flag that I raised, that's all.
Yeah, and, well, I'll say this. So, with the Black Doctors Consortium, I will say this, like when, and I had said this last week, right? I think they're doing fantastic work. I highly recommend, and maybe this is one of the reasons why they're not getting those government dollars yet. It's just in terms of the back end stuff. It's just, once again, it's those pesky details, right? Are they officially designated as a nonprofit, right? Is it because when I look for Black Doctors Consortium, I'm not finding like a central website. I'm not finding a blackdoctorsconsortium.org, for example. It's you're going to the website, the personal website of the doctor who founded the Black Doctors Consortium, and there may be a little bit of trepidation on the part of government funding sources when they're not seeing that centralized apparatus yet. Do you hear where I'm getting at with that, Earl?
Absolutely.
I think so. They're going to have to do, or they have to going to find someone, or people. I know people want to give money to the Black Doctors Consortium, but maybe there are people out there who can volunteer. Hey, nowadays it takes you like 30 minutes to set up a website. Get the language together, do all that. I think they're going to have to do that. So it's clear, okay, this is the effort, and so certain official sources, public sector or private sector sources, are comfortable giving them money, because I know that becomes an impediment at times if they're not. Right. And I did say that last week. That's not. I don't want people to take this the wrong way. I don't want the Black doctors to take this the wrong way, because it's all coming from a good space. It really is. Like, y'all really have got to set up a central website. It can't just be the individual doctor, because then it's seen as, by certain funding sources, it could be viewed as, oh, well, maybe Black doctors isn't getting the money, it's this one woman getting the money. You see what I'm saying? So, and people are just very leery. So I think that I'm not saying that that's all that it has to do with it. It could also be, like, we don't care about them Black doctors over there. They ain't getting our money. It could be a little bit of that, but it could also be on a more practical level. Hey, you know what? Y'all got to get your administrative stuff. Like, you got to kind of get that all together first, get that all sorted out, and then we'll talk about giving you millions of dollars to expand testing.
Well, I'm glad they didn't wait for that to do the testing, because we have a whole lot of people potentially, passing away in our community or not knowing they've been affected. So I understand what you're saying as far as that kind of infrastructure, but I'm glad they went ahead and did it anyway. So I'll let you go. Thank you, Charles. I appreciate you.
I absolutely appreciate that too. The communications piece is key, and people don't think about it until after they've done things, and then suddenly, they call people like me or others, like, oh, I got to put that communications piece together. And I was just having a conversation with a few other people about this too. They were like, love what the Black doctors are doing. They're going to have to they're going to have to tighten up the communications PR element and like the digital fundraising. And that stuff is very, 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 very easy and smooth to put together. Even you can put it together while you're still running. You don't have to stop doing what you're doing, but you can put it together while you're pushing on more forward with the good work you're doing. And so I'm just saying, giving a little bit of advice, practitioner advice, that might be something to revisit and look at. Also, don't forget, tomorrow, Wednesday, May 13th, WURD Radio is remembering Move. We are having a Remember Move on Word special day broadcast that's being presented by Ulysses Butch Slaughter and Brother Shamari. It's a day-long broadcast featuring in-depth examinations of the Philadelphia phenomenon that continues to test the soul of the city. This is the 35th, or we're approaching the 35th anniversary of the tragic Move bombing in West Philly. And so we're going to facilitate a series of conversations that will feature new insights on this very timeless story. It's an international story as well. People beyond Philly, across the planet, are talking about what happened 35 years ago. So listen tomorrow live on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM, 900 AM, wordradio.com, Wurd TV, Wurd app, and also YouTube. Go to youtube.com/onword, facebook.com/4word. It's a special broadcast and it's supported by the Resolve Reporting Collaborative, day-long discussion on that tragic day on May 13th, 35 years ago in Philadelphia when the city bombed itself. So we have to continue to have that conversation, and the city really needs to apologize too. That's kind of a simple step. Like, just issue the formal apology while y'all at it. But we'll be talking about that more all day tomorrow, all day Wednesday, even during this program of Reality Check midday. Also Thursday, don't forget we are scheduled to talk with Reverend Al Sharpton here on Reality Check on Thursday at 10 a.m. sharp, and talking about his return to WURD. So looking forward to that conversation as well on Wednesday. Okay, Philly and beyond, that wraps this Tuesday midday edition of Reality Check. Continue to stay tuned in here to the home of Black Talk Media. We got The Source coming up next with I think Andrea Lawful Sanders is coming up next here at The Source on WURD. Continue to tag me at Ellison Report on Twitter.com, also Facebook.com/4word. Want to thank Troy Wilmore as well. The board is still getting some hard work done there in studio. Appreciate all of you listening. And Philly, want you to stay sharp, stay smart, but more importantly, please stay safe out there. All right, we will talk to you tomorrow, Wednesday midday. Have a great afternoon. Have a good evening. Take care.